Good morning to you. 6 o'clock on Sunday, the 25th of June. Today, it's been 24 hours of mayhem. Is Putin on the brink? Wagner fighters starting to withdraw, but how will the failed Russian insurrection affect the war in Ukraine?
And it's been a week of mayhem as well for the government. After terrible news for the economy and a dive in the polls, can Rishi Sunak recover?
A badge of courage. Trump says the charges against him are something to be proud of, as he says Biden is weaponising justice.
And how to stop the sniffles without popping any pills. We'll find out how you can tackle hay fever without medication.
Of course, a lot of it depends on the weather. How's it looking today?
A hot and humid Sunday for some of us, the chance of thunderstorms for others. Join me later on for the full GB News weather forecast.
Good morning to you. I'm Stephen Dixon.
And I'm Anne Diamond, and this is Breakfast on GB News.
Before we get going, I was wondering about what you do for a living, or what you did for a living, and how that affects how people treat you. Because, you know, in this job, people often get in touch and say, oh, could you do this? Could you get us a bit of publicity on this? Could you do that? Could you... And I wonder if you're a plumber...
Oh, I see what you mean.
Are you forced to give mates rates to people? If you're an optician...
If you're a doctor, do people keep asking you for a prescription?
Yeah. All that sort of thing. If you've been affected by that throughout your working life, whatever it is you do, love to hear from you this morning.
But also, you know, it's one of the first things we ever say when we meet somebody new. Oh, what do you do? And does that then change your perception of them? If they say, well, I'm a rocket scientist, or, you know, I collect rubbish from the streets. I mean, what would it change your perception?
Yeah.
Depending on what they say they do.
Because it
You say you're a journalist, but very often people just shrink back.
Yeah.
Don't like it.
Yeah, but actually they don't get it. I think a lot of people don't quite understand how it works.
No.
Well, why would you, necessarily? But no, if you're affected by that, if you're forced to give mates rates, if you're a painter and decorator... My uncle was a painter and decorator, and I don't know, probably had to do mates rates for family and all that sort of thing.
Then if you said, yeah, what do you do? And you said, I'm a painter and decorator, I'd just grab hold of them fast and say, I've got so many jobs for you. Would you?
Exactly. So gbviews at gbnews.uk for that one. And it'd be nice to talk about something like that, because .com, gbviews at gbnews.com, because a lot of the news is very heavy today. And what looked like a mutiny in Russia yesterday appears to have been called off overnight. The mercenary Russian fighting force, the Wagner Group, led by Yevgeny Prigozhin, that's the one, had already taken over the southern city of Rostov-on-Don and were marching towards Moscow.
Yeah, and Putin was even said to have fled the Kremlin, and it looked like we could be on the brink of civil war in Russia. But then last night, a deal seems to have been done.
It's all very strange. Let's get the lowdown from Robert Fox, defence editor at the Evening Standard, who's here. Good to see you, Robert. What do we make of all this?
By the way, can I say a disclaimer? I'm not a rocket science, and I don't do mates rates.
No. We know that, Robert. We know that. What do you make of it all?
It looks a bit of a farce, and was this fixed up? That's a much too Western point of view. This is the tale of two real chances, and they've been in it together since Putin rose to power. This is the history lecture. A lot of deep history in the papers. No, you want shallow history. It's when they knew that they could grab all kinds of goodies when they were around the mayoralty of Petersburg at the beginning of this century. And Prigozhin and Putin have been buddies. Prigozhin, who'd done jail time, was the caterer. Yeah. And that's how he made his initial fortune with the Concord Catering Company.
Yeah, because there are lots of photographs of him...
serving. He was always known as Putin's chef. Then he started cooking cyber, because he got into hacking through a thing called the IRA, the Internet Research Agency, very much involved in whatever was going on, and not in 2016. But it was a big trial run of really disrupting Western elections at that time. I say no more about that. And he's sort of been around with a bunch of gangsters, but became more and more essential to what Russia was doing in Syria, and in Libya, and then started stuffing its pockets, which is where Wagner is now, in West Africa, with Mali and around there. This is important because a lot of money is being talked about. They don't need that much money because they've gone in as guards and security in an unstable situation. Gold mines, mineral resources and so on, and way down. And that's how it works. And what Prigozhin's team will be saying to him, and the gang will be saying, you've got to keep us going as a corporation. Back to what was going on yesterday and before, is I think a lot of these people who were in very serious jail terms for murder and worse, some of them, they wanted to get out of the fighting where they'd had a terrible time in Bakhmut. We are not up for the meat grinder anymore, and we don't want to go back to jail. That's what they were saying. Oh. If you saw them hanging around the images of Rostov-on-Don, very good place to go because it's where you run the logistics into Ukraine. They didn't look as if they were cooing anything because there were people chatting to them, there were people taking selfies with them. I mean, if you're doing a military takeover, wouldn't you build up checkpoints? Wouldn't you have sandbags outside the vital communications centre? And this thing of going on the road, yes, it was probably a string of about a couple of dozen vehicles, but it wasn't a takeover. And even with 25,000, if they had them, they couldn't have taken over Moscow.
No, but I mean, there is this talk of, I don't know whether we believe it or not, of Putin going into hiding and all the rest of it. Could this, even though this has ended, could it be destabilising?
Putin looked very shaky on the telly yesterday morning, unusually so. Point two, state broadcasting, for once, did not know what to say. Was there going to be a deal? Was Prigozhin going to try and take over in the Kremlin? It was all up in the air. Because I'm saying this is the odd couple. It's the story of these two going together. And I guess Putin himself, if he was half aware, knew that Prigozhin was going to do something. But he didn't know what. And by the way, from the beginning of the week, I think the Western intelligence agencies, certainly US and UK, I was getting very odd noises from various places. They thought something was up, but quite what was up. And it's a vital part of what the strategy is, or the main overall scheme, with the summer offensive in Ukraine. Gosh, what's he talking about? He's gone off on one. They know that the Ukrainians can't take back all that much ground. They haven't got the air power, which you need to cover this through. But they're doing quite well, and it is really tough. The real test was going to be how much they could disrupt the Russian command and the Russian leadership. And that's what everybody was waiting to see. Who would play into it? They knew the Defence Minister Shoigu was in trouble. They knew the Commander-in-Chief, who was the Commander of Operations there, Valery Gerasimov, was in trouble. And by the way, we haven't seen them in the last 24 hours. So was there a deal over that? What is going on? Is there going to be a renewed attack? And are the Russians going to get out of their defensive positions, or are they going to rot and wait for the supply lines to dry up? Because that's what the attack on the bridges is about.
So basically,
am I painting the picture for you?
By this sort of show of strength yesterday that looked like some sort of coup was being hatched, then that means Prigozhin's men have got what they wanted. They're basically out of Ukraine now, after taking all of the hit and doing all of the nasty work as well. In Ukraine.
And being very nasty.
Yeah, being very nasty. They've got what they want now, which is free deal. They're not going to go back to Russia to face jail time. In fact, nobody's going to hold them to account. They're going to go off to Belarus and live the
where
life
there will
there.
be nobby-no-mates. The Belarus don't like them, and they won't want them, and things are pretty volatile. You know that you now see Lukashenko, the former meat farmer, looking big and strong because for the first time he has had something that Putin wants. And this is a layoff. It's typically Russian. He was a great friend of mine. She's partly Italian. She's a great expert on this area, saying, look, knowing my background, saying you think of things in Western European terms, Brit, Northern Europe, and you know Italy very well. And she was talking about what the Italians have been saying about it. Everything is a mafia plot to them. Now, my friend said, no, it isn't, because the Russians are far too incompetent now. They don't do it. And there were wonderful reports, I was saying to one of your colleagues just now, on my social media yesterday, that the reason why nobody was moving in Voronezh and in Rostov-on-Don, they couldn't get the police to turn up. They were either hungover, a lot of them, about half of them, or completely drunk still from the Friday night binge. And it is, and Zelensky, he would say it, wouldn't he, the Ukrainian leader, but he's got it about right. There is some sort of extraordinary chaos going on in Russia, but it's unfortunately chaos still with an awful lot of firepower.
Yes, but with that in mind, because the Wagner Group had done so much, and as we were saying, done the dirty work, if they're not there now, where does that leave it?
Yes, and I think you've got it absolutely nailed. Do the Russian grunts, who've often been forced into the line against their will, do they want to take the place at Bakhmut, Zaporizhia, Advika, all these places that have been coming up on our maps? The only thing that they've got with a slight advantage, as I'm sure you've been reporting, is that the Russian attack helicopters, the appropriately named alligators, the Ka-62s, have been pretty effective. And that's where the Ukrainians are weak. They do not have local air power to protect their frontline forces. But what is extraordinary, given the balance of forces going back, if we go back to February last year, why have the Russian Air Force performed so badly? And they've hardly been used. OK, they've been conserving their aircraft. And I wonder if there's some politics in this, because they keep on saying that the man who was in charge and who was the butcher of Aleppo and places like that when the Russians were in Syria, Mr. Surovkin, I think that that's who Prigozhin was trying to get put in charge of the operation again. It was his buddy. But latest reports and how reliable they are over the last 72 hours, those two have fallen out.
Oh, gross.
And so, I mean, it is an extraordinary story. But if I could just finish on this, the Western governments quite rightly said, we're not going to mix into this plot. But they cannot afford to do nothing over the next 3 or 4 weeks. They've got to plug the frontline weaknesses of the Ukrainians, and they are weak on defending against particularly the helicopters. It's what's called the close air battle. And that's what we have to focus on, because if they can keep going, it's pretty good. They're causing shocks. The bash on the bridge with the British missiles was a shock. Yet another supply line cut off to Crimea and from Crimea into southern Ukraine.
We know there's this whole hoo-ha about what we're providing in terms of air support and what have you. It's been a controversial issue. If there's an issue with these alligator helicopters, what about SAMs? Are we providing things like SAMs?
Yes, we are. But
What's
the
that?
fact that
surface-to-air missiles.
but they've got to have a greater range. This is what these helicopters can deal with. They can stand back. That's the technicality. But I really want to take you up on that. You're absolutely right. We seem to have put in an awful lot, but it's so uncoordinated. And this is where we have to be critical of the American approach from Biden himself. It's always the right thing, about 2 steps too late. And this is where the Brits have been on the front foot, because it's the Brits saying, we want longer-range missiles like Storm Shadow. We want tanks. And, OK, there are only 14, 20. Actually, there are a lot more. I think there are more than 14 Challenger 2 tanks. But saying, yes, we're going to put them in. At last started everybody doing it, but they're still slow in getting them in there. And the thing that really is the balance is the contest of human power. It's quantity versus quality. The quantity has been lost on the Russian side. The quality is being lost on the Ukrainian side, because these guys who are fighting and dying for their country, they're highly qualified engineers. Some of them have even been, medical doctors who've seen their guys dying around them, and they're getting taken out. And these are the people desperately needed, thinking of the conference in London this week, for rebuilding Ukraine. And the one thing about Ukraine that also people are adding, you've got to detoxify, you've got to get rid of the corruption, you've got to get rid of the overbearing power of Ukraine's oligarchs, and they still exist.
Really? Gosh, what a
Fascinating.
complex situation, isn't it? And
Oh, no, a piece of cake.
And as you said, you know, if we judge it from the Western perspective,
Absolutely.
we may not be seeing it right.
Yeah, absolutely right.
Gosh.
And Anne, you're not Anne, you're Robert. Thank you very much.
No, we are going to change roles.
It's one of those mornings.
It is one of those
Thank
mornings.
you.
Thank you
Yeah,
very much
thanks very
indeed. It's 6:15. Let's bring you up to date with what else is going on today.
Police in Canada are assessing whether they will launch a full criminal investigation into the Titan submersible that imploded, killing 5 people in the North Atlantic. The Transportation Safety Board of Canada is interviewing those who were on board the Polar Prince ship, which launched the vessel into the sea. Inspectors say the investigation could take up to 2 years.
All state secondary schools in England are now equipped with a defibrillator. The government says secondary schools receive priority because the risk of cardiac arrest increases with age. The Department for Health says the device will also be rolled out in primary and special schools, due to be completed by the end of the summer term.
And the Princess of Wales teamed up with tennis champion Roger Federer to celebrate Wimbledon ball girls and boys. Kate joined the 8-time Wimbledon champion and watched a training session where youngsters were hoping to impress the selectors and get one of the 250 spots for the tournament next month. The Princess is the club's patron, and she praised the hard work of the ball boys and girls, describing them as amazingly professional.
I would never have wanted to have been a ball boy.
Oh, really?
No, because I found that sort of thing would terrify me. I would be scared stiff about whether I'd...
being hit by a ball?
No, but just about, getting it and doing it right.
It's important to do it right. Roger Federer was a ball boy.
Was he?
Apparently, yeah, when he was about 8. It gave him the taste for tennis. Worked out quite well for him, really, didn't it?
It's all right.
But Princess Catherine she's an absolute star, isn't she? She can even play tennis, and say, well.
I mean, can she do it well,
Yeah,
though? Is it just
apparently.
nicely edited?
Well, Roger Federer apparently said she was really good.
What else would he say?
Well, I
though?
know.
Could do better. Don't think so. She's future queen. But no, good on her. She gets stuck in, doesn't she?
She does, yeah.
She looks all right in the tennis whites.
She certainly does. I know, that's what I mean. She's
all
a
right in a
star.
bin bag, wouldn't she? It's
She's a
terrifying. If you're a tennis nut, get it. When does Wimbledon actually start?
Next week.
Right, so they're still only picking them now, then, the ball boys and girls.
Yes, it's interesting, isn't it? I didn't know I thought they just sort of selected a few and then trained them up. But obviously they do the training and then pick the very best. Yeah. But they are brilliant to watch, the ball boys and girls. They're so efficient. And they sort of crouch down low and everything. And there are some funny moments as well.
Yeah. Be scared. I'd be too scared to do it. If you've ever done it, let us know. Now, it has been a tough week for... Sorry, is that a fly?
Yes.
Honestly, they're terrible in here.
They really are.
I don't know where they're coming from, because we're in the basement and all the flowers are plastic. So what's going on?
Yeah, but we're in the basement. That's where drains tend to be, isn't it? And that's what you get, why you get flies.
Oh, I see.
Anyway, you don't want to know that, do you? It's time on a Sunday morning.
No, as I was saying, it's been a tough week for the Conservative Party. The interest rate, of course, went up for the 13th consecutive month, the highest level since 2008 now.
Yeah, and then there's a YouGov poll which shows that Tory support has fallen to 22%, which is a figure not seen since February, and actually it's only 3 points higher than their lowest rating ever in this Parliament, and that's after Liz Truss's mini-budget.
So let's talk to Special Advisor to Nadeem Zahawi, Mark Lehane, who joins us now. Mark, really good to see you this morning.
Good morning.
I mean, the problem with all this, there's always obstacles. They just seem to be really piling up on Rishi Sunak at the moment, and it's, of course, increasingly difficult to bounce back from.
Well, of course, there's been, as you said, a whole load of really intense, serious challenges that the government have got to deal with. And this is how Rishi Sunak made his case for being Prime Minister. He's going to come in, he's a details guy, and he's going to not be swayed by sort of events as they pop up. He's going to stick to his plan and try and get stuff done. However, it's looking quite tough. One of his 5 pledges for the year was that he's going to halve inflation. Well, when the inflation figures came out earlier on this week, rather than coming down, as lots of people are expecting, inflation stayed stuck exactly where it was before 8.7%. That's why the following day, the Bank of England, rather than bumping interest rates up a little bit or keeping them where they were, they bumped them up 0.5% to 5%. Like you said, the highest rate it's been since 2008. So all these things are piling up. But only a few months ago, things were beginning to look a bit different. We'd had the deal about the Windsor Framework to change how Northern Ireland was working with the European Union and stuff like that. So I think we're going to have to give things time. And as the Prime Minister said this week, he's 100% over the detail. I think he said 100% committed to getting these things done. And he's trying to encourage everyone just to hold their nerve, even though the economy's looking difficult and even though the poll ratings for the government are looking really tricky.
Yeah, he's got 3 or is it 4 by-elections to fight, though, as well. And you said maybe we've got to give it time, but he's running out of time. I mean, if it's only a year now until a general election, maybe just over a year, I mean, could anyone turn things around in time?
It is looking increasingly difficult, and you're absolutely right. He came into office about 8 or 9 months ago. At that point, there were sort of 2 years to go. Now we've got a year or a maximum of 18 months till the election's called. I think probably in the government, what they're hoping for is that they get to the end of 2023 and inflation has come down. They have managed to bring down the number of people crossing the channel in small boats. The economy is still growing, those kind of things. And then they can say to people, look, we said we'd do these 5 things. We've achieved these 5 things. Now, please trust us to do a whole load more things. And eventually, when we get to the election, vote for us. But it's really hard. And Labour will just be watching this. And they don't really need to do much right now. Keir Starmer and his team don't need to do much. They just need to let the government have difficulties and then step in and convince people that they're more reliable, they're more trusted in terms of what they would do if they were in government.
It's part of the problem here that we're not seeing a lot of decisive action from Rishi Sunak. He needs to stand up and be counted a little bit more. I mean, David Mellor was suggesting to us the other day the strongest thing he could do at the moment is sack Andrew Bailey, the Governor of the Bank of England.
Well, one of the key things about the Bank of England is that they are independent in terms of how they make their decisions. So for any government or Prime Minister to remove the head of the Bank of England would be a huge move. And that would probably undermine a lot of the work they're trying to do on the economy, because it would be seen as though the government were telling the Bank of England what to do, and probably the financial markets and the economy would face turmoil off the back of that. It is really, really hard. But as you said, we've had a whole load of these issues pile up over the years, and a whole load of things one after the other. Obviously, we had the Brexit issues in 2017, 18, 19, trying to get that done. Then just as soon as that election happened, then COVID kicked in. Then just as we were coming out of COVID, we had a Ukraine kick-off, and then we had inflation take off. It's a whole series of really difficult challenges. Governments all around the world, perhaps we should remember this, governments all around the world are struggling with very similar kind of challenges. It's not unique to Britain. But of course, if you're Rishi Sunak right now, you know that voters don't care about the fact that it's hard elsewhere. So he's got to think about what he can do here in the United Kingdom for voters straight away.
What do you think is going to happen in these by-elections? Do you think they're going to get well and truly trounced, or will there be some trust left?
That's a really good question, and I think they are really up against it. I live in Bedford. I'm very close to mid-Bedfordshire. It looks like all the parties are absolutely slugging it out there, absolutely doing their best. Labour and the Liberal Democrats seem both confident that they can take the seat from the Conservatives. My hunch is that people want to give the government a bloody nose right now, and in those by-elections, the government will have a tough time. But at the same time, the government are throwing everything they can into those by-elections in the hope that they can hold on to, if not all of them, at least some of them, and then get through the summer. Because ideally, I think 3 out of the 4 by-elections are going to be before the summer. I think the government are hoping they can get them out of the way, and then people can go away over the summer, take a breather, and come back and focus on the job again in the autumn. OK, Mark Lehane, good to see you this morning. Thanks very much indeed.
I tell you what, I don't think they should be going away for the summer. Any of those ministers, they need to be seen to be grafting through the summer. Oh yeah, don't they really? Yeah, they really do. They really do. But it's. I mean, Mark's right. It is very difficult, but we can't. We need to see some definite action now, don't we? Yeah, we do. Quite what that is meant to be, I don't know. But then nobody seems to know at the moment. But that's what we pay them for. Yeah. Mm. If you know, let us know. gbviews@gbnews.com. If you know, yeah. You might do. Please come and go run the country. Yeah. But that's why I think that we miss. I mean, I know he said he's a safe pair of hands sort of thing. He's slow and steady, Rishi Sunak, instead of blustering Boris, you might say. Mm. But blustering Boris at least could deliver a speech and get people riled up or excited. At the moment, there's very little to get excited about coming from the government.
No. And you know what, Andrew Bailey? I know it would be controversial to get rid of him, but the Bank of England is seen to be failing in all of this.
See, we've heard that time and again, that the government can't interfere to sack Andrew Bailey, for instance. That just wouldn't be seen as the right thing to do. But maybe, as you said, it would be strong and decisive, and it would show that this government has teeth.
So we need some new thinking on this.
Anyway, let us know what you think. You know how to get hold of us. GBViews@gbnews.com.
Up next, Donald Trump is back in the news again, but what for this time? This is Breakfast on GB News.
First and foremost, I am a GB News fan, and I was before I was working here. Just love the fact that we're asking the questions that a lot of establishment media won't ask.
With a bit of a twist, we not only want to inform you, but we want to keep you entertained.
It's worth the drive because you get in and the team's all ready and waiting, they're itching to go, and it's a proper little family.
GB News is the people's channel.
It's the audience that makes the programme sing.
We're giving our viewers and our listeners a voice. I see the thousands of your letters, tweets, emails, you name it, coming in.
Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it?
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent you.
It's time for something different. It's time for GB News. I'm very patriotic. I believe in Britain. Our best days lie ahead.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Join us here on GB News.
The people's channel.
Britain's news channel.
Nightmare commute. Kick it up a gear with me, Patrick Christie's, at drive time, 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News Radio. You can listen online and on DAB+, on the smart speaker app, and on the GB News app. And if you've got an Alexa, all you have to say is, Alexa, play GB News. We're also on TuneIn and the Radio Player apps. From the school run to rush hour, get revved up with me, Patrick Christie's, on GB News and GB News Radio.
Westminster is going around in ever-decreasing circles, followed by the media. Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it? Join me at 7 p.m, Mondays to Thursdays on Farage, here on GB News. We will have open, rational debate. We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this. Join us here on GB News, the people's channel. Britain is watching.
6:27 now. Donald Trump has accused President Biden of weaponising the Justice Department in a speech at the Road to Majority conference yesterday.
He also said he considered the 2 indictments against him as a badge of courage.
Let's talk to Steve Gill, who served under both the Bush and Clinton administrations. Good to see you. I guess we shouldn't be surprised. He's trying to swing all this to his advantage.
I guess to kind of leap off of Anne's comments, we go from blustering Boris Johnson to defensive Donald Trump. And at this Faith and Freedom conference, he was asserting his defenses. He's bloodied but unbowed by the latest indictment. And he's asserting both his legal and factual defenses to the charges against him. We'll see how that plays in the court. It certainly played well in this crowd, but I'm not sure it will play the same way in the court.
He certainly is the most amazing showman, isn't he? That no matter what the Democrats particularly try and fling at him, he just bats it back, doesn't he? He can turn it to his advantage.
Yeah, and again, we're going to see this aggressive, combative Donald Trump. It's what we've seen in the past, and he shows no signs of changing. I think that he also came out swinging against Biden and the latest information about the Biden family and the corruption of Hunter Biden and the alleged whistleblower information that literally millions of dollars were obtained from the Chinese, with Hunter Biden claiming at least at one point that his father was sitting right there with him, and the Chinese mogul he was dealing with needed to cough up the $5 million that day, or his dad and he would be after them. So again, you've got this information that is to some extent being buried by the American news media, and certainly has been buried by the FBI and the Department of Justice, which again, I think you're exactly right, Ann. He's going to come out swinging against the Department of Justice, the weaponization of these agencies against him personally, and I think we're going to see this for the next 18 months or so.
I'll tell you what it does, Steve. I mean, certainly from an outsider's perspective, it makes the whole American system look corrupt as hell.
I have to agree, and it certainly feels like it when you have, a Hunter Biden who's just struck a plea deal with the federal government over taxes and over a gun charge that leaves him with no jail time under the plea deal he struck. And you have other people, celebrities and others that have actually served jail time who have faced serious jail time for the same exact charges that he gets a pass on with the Biden Justice Department. We had a character in the Trump realm who was his CFO, a 77-year-old man who was sent to Rikers Island jail in New York for 5 months on paperwork charges, on IRS charges that are much less substantial than what Hunter Biden was facing. And yet, because he was associated with Trump, he goes to Rikers Island, and Hunter Biden, who faces much worse and certainly more evidence against him, apparently gets a complete pass by the Department of Justice appointed by Joe Biden.
And then, of course, there's the debate about whether, even if Donald Trump did have to do jail time, he could still run for president and be president from jail. Do you think that's true?
Well, we're already seeing this trial get delayed because the lawyers that will be representing President Trump have to get cleared under security to review the classified documents that are at issue, or at least allegedly at issue here. So I think they're delaying that for months. I think we're going to continue to see delays. I don't expect that this trial on these particular charges to take place before the next presidential election next November. So he very well could be going to trial after he's been elected and has already pardoned himself. So I think this thing has so many levels. It's kind of like the old Star Trek chess, where you play 3 levels of chess. Not only is the government moving pieces, but Donald Trump is moving them fast and furiously as well.
It's all about his base, though, isn't it? I mean, what are we seeing in terms of the Trump base? Is it as strong as it was last time round?
Yeah, I think his base, and it's maybe 35 to 40, maybe as much as 45% in the Republican primary. These are folks that will crawl over cracked glass on hot asphalt in the peak of heat in August, or some of what Britain's experiencing right now. These folks are absolutely dedicated to him. And I think the challenge for any of his opponents in the growing field of Republican primary candidates is, how do you attack Donald Trump to bring him down without losing any opportunity to get his supporters? I mean, if you hit him, you may be losing them not only in this election cycle, but for some of these folks looking 4 years down the road, the Trump MAGA supporters may hold a grudge for a long time. It is a very tight needle to thread, and I think most people recognize it's going to be impossible for anybody on the Republican side to do that, and he is almost certainly going to be the Republican nominee.
OK. Steve, good to see you.
Very
Thanks
good to see
much
you. Thank
indeed.
you. Yes.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks. I tell you what, it doesn't not just make you think, how incredibly corrupt all sides are in American politics, but also you're looking at 2 old men.
Yeah.
And they are very old to hold that sort of responsibility.
Yes.
And the Sleepy Joe thing has stuck, and I'm afraid it looks true. When Trump called Joe Biden Sleepy Joe, I'm afraid that sort of turns out to look true.
Yeah.
Half the time, at least.
Yes, it's not looking great, is it?
No, it really isn't. Is that the best they can do?
Why isn't there an injection of younger blood in all of this? Surely that's what they need. It's what they need.
Actually, we were talking about jobs, weren't we, a bit
earlier?
Oh,
yes, we
already
were.
got in touch.
I love all of this. Andrew, hi Andrew, is a driving instructor, happens regularly being asked for sort of mates rates and things, but in turn, I ask people for mates rates, so money doesn't really change hands, just our professional skills. Bit of bartering's not so bad like that.
But it depends what you do, isn't it? That Adrian is in Warwickshire. Morning, Adrian. He said, I'm a professional photographer and I always get invited to birthday parties or family and friends events like weddings and christenings. And at the end of the message to me, at the end of my invitation, is always the line, bring your camera if you want to. I once went to a 60th birthday party and the son of the woman whose birthday it was came up to me and said in a very disappointed tone, oh, you haven't brought your camera with you. Because It's a cheap way of getting a good photographer along to your do.
It's cheeky.
If you know them, yeah.
It's cheeky. Kevin is an entertainer. Says, I'm always happy to do magic tricks on demand. A little lad just up the road asks for one whenever he sees me.
Well, you would, wouldn't you?
Well, that's quite sweet.
Yeah.
That's quite
It's
sweet.
like whenever Paul Daniels used to come in to be interviewed about something, whatever, you always ask him. And also, he just can't help it. He just builds up a little phalanx of people around him and he just entertains them.
Yeah.
No.
I was in a motorway service station once, eating sandwiches in the car, like you do on a long journey, and Paul Daniels and Debbie McGee pulled up alongside
Oh, my
me.
goodness.
And
did you say, oh, hello?
I didn't. I just sort of looked at them casually, but they had some little boy came up to them and he showed them they had a load of rabbits in the boot.
Paul Daniels had rabbits in his boot?
Yeah.
What, live ones?
Yeah, well, they must, to
Well, I
pull
suppose
out the
they pull
hat.
out of a hat, yeah.
So they weren't magics
He
from
didn't have
nowhere.
white doves up his sleeve.
No. I remember that. I didn't. I sort of wanted to say hello, but didn't. Jean says, I was a seamstress all my life, and I always did jobs for friends. I didn't charge my friends, but I always charged non-friends.
Yeah. And Kim says, I was a county court bailiff for 8 years, and I now get asked about debt all the time and what to do when bailiffs call.
Oh, it's a whole mix of people.
It's lovely hearing what your jobs people do.
So keep them coming through. gbviews@gbnews.com. Up next, though, we're going to be talking more about the Wagner Group and that mutiny against Vladimir Putin with our paper's guests, Claire Pearsall and Lewis Oakley.
Like all families, we have arguments every now and then, but actually we agree on what the mission of GB News is, and that's the most fundamentally important thing.
GB News provides the kind of platform that lets all voices be heard. We don't hold back. We're free to say what we really think.
Just because some people who live in a tiny little Westminster bubble think that their particular story is important, that's not the most important story for me.
And often they will be difficult stories that you won't find on the establishment media.
Because what people think in the north of England may be very different to what they're thinking in the home counties.
We're going to carry on telling the world what life is really like for households up and down the UK.
We love to be in your car, in your kitchen as you're having your breakfast. Whatever you're doing, you are part of the show. If it matters to you, it matters to us.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News,
the People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Join me, Patrick Christie's, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6. We tackle the day's news agenda like you've never seen before. It's high tempo, high octane, the most controversial topics, and the best guests. You will not be able to take your eyes and ears off it. I'm not afraid to ask the questions that you really want answered. 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join us every night on GB News at 11 p.m. for Headliners, which is 3 top comedians going through the next day's news stories, which is exactly what you need, because when the establishment has gone crazy, you need some craziness to make sense of it. So join us 11 p.m. every night on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, on Sunday mornings from 9:30, taking the politicians to task and breaking out of SW1 to see how their decisions are affecting you across the UK. Bursting the Westminster bubble every Sunday morning, only on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain's watching.
6:38, good morning. You're watching and listening to Breakfast with Stephen and Anne.
Let's take a look at today's newspapers then. The Sunday Telegraph is leading with Russia this morning, as most papers are. The mutineers turn back after striking a deal with the Russian president, or at least that's what we all think.
Putin pushed to the brink as the bloodbath is averted after the mercenaries turn back, is what the Sunday Mirror has to say.
And the Sunday Times there, more on the is it Wagner or no? It's
Wagner.
Wagner Group, yeah. They describe Putin as humiliated.
Now, something a little bit lighter in the Sunday Express. Sporty Kate stunned tennis royalty, with Roger Federer, that is, with her impressive serve. As the pair yesterday were highlighting the work of ball boys and ball girls at Wimbledon. It's a great picture.
Yeah, it is. Lovely picture. Time to go through them throughout the papers, actually, with Claire Pearsall and Lewis Oakley. So welcome, welcome. Claire, we're starting with the Wagner Group and the various descriptions of the mutiny, or what looked like a mutiny, being called off suddenly. You've been looking at The Observer, how The Observer's covering it.
Yeah, it was quite an interesting day yesterday. You sort of wake up and you think there's a coup happening in Russia, and it suddenly became very exciting, and everybody was an expert in what was going on over in Russia and understanding that kind of landscape. It's quite interesting now. The Observer's looking at the point that Putin is now at his weakest. He has been weakened. This is a dent to his authority. But I'm not so sure. When you read through other newspapers, there seems to be this divide that people think it's weakened him and other people think this is part of his grand plan to get everybody's attention away from what he wants to do with Ukraine and the other battles that he's going to fight around that kind of area. But it does highlight now, and the Observer picks this up, at how isolated Putin has become. He has lost a lot of his friendships. He's got China, who are backing away from it. They don't want to get involved in this. The other countries surrounding him have got NATO membership, and they're all looking very carefully at that. And even the likes of sort of Kazakhstan and Tajikistan and places like that are not roaming in to help. Everybody is taking a step back. Now, Prigozhin is quite an interesting character, and
to say the least.
To say the least.
He's a hot dog seller.
He was Putin's chef. And
but he started off on hot dog stalls.
He did start off on a hot dog stall, and he's worked his way up, and he's become...
He worked his way up and then made a lot of money when, Russia went capitalist.
This is it. He has never been in the military. Now, when you look at the footage of him and you read all of this, you would assume, when he's striding around in his combats, that he is a military man. He isn't. What he does have is some great presentational skills. So this is how he has risen to be the sort of multi-millionaire leader of a mercenary group now in Belarus. Now, I don't think that he is going to be as safe as perhaps he believes, just because he has managed to get over to Belarus and Putin has suggested all charges will be dropped. I don't think this is the end of it. I think this is the start of another nasty war in a country that has nuclear capabilities.
Yes. I think that's the thing to remember most, isn't it? That he's still got his finger on the nuclear button if he so chooses. Lewis, you were looking at the way the Mail on Sunday is saying, did Putin bribe him with money?
Yeah, well, this is the thing that, I haven't seen any figures, but it's, a lot of money to, just stand down and go away. From all I can read, though, he doesn't need the money. He's got a lot of money. So I think, this sounds more like it was about, you've backed yourself into a situation now. You've only got 25,000 people marching here. Just go away, we'll drop the charges. I think that that's really more what probably tempted him to go. I'm not sure how the people of Belarus are going to feel about these 25,000 people that have, are not good people, many of them coming out of jails that are now able to go over there. So
and they're guilty of terrible atrocity in Ukraine,
really awful charges there. So, if you were in Belarus, I'm not sure you'd be happy with that
deal.
Some
of them are joining the Russian army, supposedly. They've got a free pass to join the Russian army, should they want to.
Why would they want to? Because they've been mercenaries, quite well paid by the sound of it.
I think they don't want to go back to jail. They don't want to go and serve a sentence. They think they can get off scot-free if they go and join the Russians. But when all of this was happening yesterday, Russian troops, a large amount of them were kind of sitting around on their hands, not getting involved. So I don't think this is quite as clear-cut as everybody protecting Putin. And it's interesting to look at what's not happening as much as what is. And if they're not out there protecting their president, you can sense the unrest, and I wonder if more groups will form, more mercenary groups will pop up, and perhaps that is a start of it with...
That's very ugly.
This is the worry.
Terribly ugly, isn't it?
It is, it is. This is not the end, and I think we do need to be worried. I don't think it's as simple and as dry as people are making out.
No, well, I'm sure not. Let's have a look at the Sunday Times, Claire. The man who bankrolled Extinction Rebellion and Just Stop Oil is now saying, just stop.
He is indeed. A Californian entrepreneur, Trevor Nielsen, who co-funded the Climate Emergency Fund in America, which set up the likes of Extinction Rebellion, with some very heavy bankrolling from Hollywood A-listers and some very rich people over there, has now said that this disruptive type of activism doesn't work. And I think
that's quite something for him to say.
It is quite something for him to say, but I do think it's interesting that he makes a really valid point. Once you lose the respect of the public and their support, then you're on a sort of sliding scale back down to failure again. So I think it's sort of quite interesting, speaking from his home in Malibu. So I don't... he's not from a normal background. He doesn't want to keep funding this kind of activism, and he's now coming up against those real believers in the cause and disruptive activism who are saying, no, you absolutely must, this is the whole point of it. And it would be nice to hear what people think. The people that are disrupted on a daily basis by the slow-walking groups, I wonder what they're sitting and thinking, because I think this chap is going to become a little bit of a hero to those people who are just fed up that nothing is being done, the police aren't... Well, they are starting to police now, but it has taken a very, very long time.
I'd very much doubt he's going to be a hero to any of them, because he's the one who opened Pandora's box.
I think, you know what, I don't know if you saw it, but I saw about a week or two ago, the school kids, they had enough, and, you know, they were quite unruly. And I did think, if you've lost the kids, that's a bit of a sea change for you. And also, I just don't know, I think we waste so much good time. We could be talking about potential solutions for what we could do on this kind of destructive activism that just irritates people. I don't think anyone's seen these protests and...
But one of the people in Extinction Rebellion retorted to this guy, said, look, we don't, you know, people have spent years, you know, signing petitions and having peaceful protests, and it's got us nowhere. At least we're being talked about by being disruptive.
But it still doesn't solve the problem. You can be talked about as much as you want. And the problem is, it's not as easy to reorganise society to hit net zero as people would like it to be. This is about really innovation. So we can kind of say, look, we don't want to be using fossil fuels, we don't want to be doing this, but it is going to take some time. We can't turn it all off now because we'd starve and there'd be no heating. So it's a tricky situation that is really not helped by causing disruption, I don't think.
The problem is, all these debates, which are nuanced, actually, become very black and white, don't they? I mean, that's the problem. We've got to turn it all off now. Greta Thunberg says, you've destroyed our future, and all this sort of language, which is nonsense.
And it is nonsense. And what would happen if you turned off all the oil and gas? I mean, the lights would go out and it would be absolute carnage. There has to be some middle ground with this, but unfortunately, like every debate, it seems, for the last 5 or so years, people come down on one side or the other. And you don't get the debate in the middle. You don't look at what the UK can do realistically. And nobody's going to accept, well, look, we can do this, but it's going to take 5, 10, 15 years. That's not immediate enough for some people. And I worry that this is now what the United Kingdom has become in terms of debate. It's either everything or nothing.
Yeah.
And I think that's the worry, is that you then lose the nuances. As you say, you don't look at the investments being made already. You don't look at what investments you can make in the future, things like nuclear, things like wind farms, solar farms, whatever it may be. You don't let that go ahead because you're stopping it by having an argument saying, but I don't want it because I'm not having it now.
Yeah. No, fair point. Fair point. Should we change tack?
Let's do it.
You on for tennis?
Let's talk about something positive. Born to Serve is the title here, which is quite nice. This is Kate Middleton. Talented Kate. She can do just about anything, apparently.
Can I just say, can we stop calling her Kate Middleton?
Yes, I think we all try to...
Because she's not a Middleton or Kate now, she's Catherine. Isn't she?
Okay.
I know, but I know she appears...
Princess of Wales.
The Princess of Wales. But I know she appears in all the papers. People always call her Kate Middleton, but she's not, is she?
I know. Well, it annoys me when people call Meghan Markle.
Yeah.
Because she hasn't been Markle for quite a few years now. It's crazy, isn't it?
It's branding. We can't change.
Yeah.
Anyway, so she has teamed up with tennis legend Roger Federer. They have, had a game that's kind of been recorded. So it's a video. So the pair have shot this video to celebrate 250 ball boys and girls selected for next month's championships in southwest London.
Oh, look. She does look wonderful, doesn't she?
And they've taken kind of a behind-the-scenes look at how they're trained. And, they had a bit of a game themselves. And apparently she was quite good. When is she ever not?
Yes, exactly. Yeah, well, just for the benefit of our radio listeners, we've got a lovely shot there of them on a lovely grass court there, Federer and Princess Catherine, Princess of Wales, and they both look so fantastic in their tennis whites.
Yes, jolly good.
Yes,
jolly
good.
good.
She can.
And we're seeing them with the ball boys and girls as well, who are brilliant.
Yeah, I mean, it's whether she. The interesting thing is, I wonder if she's any good or not.
Why shouldn't she be? She was good. She's
apparently. No, but
she's good at what she does, isn't she? She went to one of those posh schools there where they would have played tennis every day. Yeah, she went to Marlborough.
I do wonder how hard she must work because, you know, that she just seems to be great at everything. But, you know, I'm like, did she spend, like, weeks practising for this one appearance? Because I would.
Yeah.
I'll tell you what, it's one of those things, it doesn't look like hard work, but actually she probably woke up with them. Let me neck, I'm going to go and play tennis with Roger Federer today.
Yeah.
Could be the last thing she wanted to do.
I wish I could wake up and think, I've got to go and play tennis with Roger Federer. I mean, what a thing to wake up to. But I mean, she is sporty and she is very good.
Yeah.
And as Anne says, she went to a school which probably had the facilities to allow her to become an expert in many different sports, which a lot of kids don't have. And I think it's great that you look at the ball boys and girls and recognise the part that they play.
Yeah. I always feel a bit sorry that Catherine has been able to do so much work at Wimbledon. She's the patron of the All England club now, and Diana, who was the absolute Princess Diana, who was the absolute tennis mad fan, never got to do any of those things because they sort of didn't allow her to, and she wasn't. She would have loved to have done all of this stuff, wouldn't she?
Yeah, absolutely.
She was so into tennis, and
why wouldn't they let her do that?
Well, because she wasn't allowed to be patron because the Duke and Duchess of Kent were already.
That's right.
And so she couldn't even go along and sit there on finals day because that was seen as their job. So she got to see all the other tennis days. She went to as often as she possibly could.
Yeah.
But I think I'm right in saying that she wasn't allowed to go on finals day because that was seen as the Duke and Duchess of Kent's job.
It would upstage
It would upstage. She'd already got the job, yeah.
Oh, well, there's the thought. Claire, Lewis, got to leave it there. Thank you very much indeed. It's interesting. I wonder if, because of her job, does she get asked for favours? You know, could you give me a knighthood?
She probably does.
Could you get me a tennis ticket?
But people wouldn't walk up to her and say, what do you do? Because they know, wouldn't they?
No. Mind you, she should up her rates, because Brian says, whilst I was a DJ, I found my treatment by clients depended on how much I was charging. The higher the fee, the more respect I got. So mates' rates were for real mates only.
That's very interesting.
Oh, yeah.
Actually, let me just do the one from Brett as well. Morning, Brett. I own a van, and it seems everyone wants to be my mate. Can you just move a sofa for me? Could you just take my boy's bike to the garage? The list goes on, and they want it done for free most of the time. They then say, I owe you a beer, mate. But I actually don't drink.
No, they owe you a beer. They owe you a £20 note.
Yeah.
That's what they owe you. Yeah, you shouldn't ask. I don't really agree with that. Trying to get something for nothing. It's not fair.
It's not fair, no.
Not fair.
Not fair.
Anyway, maybe you do need, when it comes to things like hay fever, perhaps you don't need anything at all. That's the thing. Do you imagine not popping those Piriton or whatever it is that you're taking? An NHS doctor has revealed different ways that if you suffer from hay fever, you can combat your symptoms without using any medication.
Yeah, now Dr. Suj took to TikTok to share his tips online in a video which has racked up almost 100,000 views.
And he joins us now. Good to see you this morning.
Good morning.
So what's the magic here? What do people need to do?
So there are lots of different therapies for hay fever. So there's focuses around medical therapies as well as non-medical therapies. So your medical therapies can be given to you by any local chemist. Typically involves eye drops, nasal steroids, and antihistamine tablets. And they vary in strength. But your non-medical therapies will focus around reducing your exposure to pollen, because hay fever is an allergic reaction to pollen, particularly grass pollen in the summer months, as we're experiencing now.
So how can you sort of isolate yourself from pollen at the moment?
It's hard, and it can be quite restrictive, but it all depends on the severity of your symptoms. So, for example, if you want to either reduce your exposure to pollen or reduce, if you can't prevent going outside and things like that, you want to reduce the amount of pollen that's going into your nose, eyes, mouth and throat. For example, avoid walking across freshly cut grass, avoid walking across grass if you can. If you're indoors, try and keep your windows shut. I know it's quite difficult when it's really hot outside.
Yeah.
What about the old Vaseline trick? Does that work?
So Vaseline is great. So you can put a thin layer around your eyes and around your nostrils and under your nose and also around your mouth if you really wanted to.
Right.
Yeah, so essentially it will capture the pollen.
Before it goes into you.
And hopefully try and prevent it going into your eyes.
I've had some people say you actually stick a bit of Vaseline up inside your nose.
So some people would. When I've spoken with ear, nose and throat doctors, they've always said try and avoid putting any fingers or other devices in your nose and ears. But yeah, people do put it around the nostrils.
What about the one I've heard of, which is try and eat local honey? Is there anything in that? Honey that's made by local bees can actually give you some sort of immunity against local pollen.
So I have heard of that in the comments of some of my videos, but I've never actually looked into it myself to check if there's any scientific credence to it.
Right. Oh, it's worth a shot then. Do you think there's a need to do this, or why not just take the tablets or squirt the spray up your nose or whatever it is?
So it all depends on the severity of your symptoms. Some people don't necessarily like taking lots of medications. When people come to general practice, they've usually tried a lot of these things, and many of these tactics are available on the NHS websites. But if, let's say, your symptoms are quite mild, and if you are staying inside, let's say you've got a ground floor flat that is not facing the sun, you can keep your window shut during the day. You can not bring fresh flowers into your house every couple of days, and that will help to reduce your symptoms.
You're both wearing glasses. Do they protect you in any way from pollen?
So sunglasses can. We talk about wraparound glasses as well. Again, it's just putting a barrier method. Many people, again, in the comments to my videos have reported that wearing a face mask helps to reduce like how much pollen they're breathing in.
Yeah, I suppose it would. I can't imagine it being overly popular though, with a lot of people going back.
Sunglasses and a face mask.
Yeah, you never know. Dr. Sue, it's really good to see you.
Thank you very
much indeed. Coming up, we're going to be looking at how the UK is reacting to that Russian rebellion. We'll bring you more details after the weather.
Hello there, very good morning to you. I'm Jonathan Vautry here with your latest GB News weather forecast provided by the Met Office. After a warm and humid start to the day, there is the chance of some thunderstorms as we head into this afternoon. They're being driven by this area of low pressure that is moving its way in from the northwest, and we are particularly watching this cold front as it gradually pushes its way eastwards, already providing some heavy outbreaks of rain to Northern Ireland, and then will eventually shift its way into Scotland, Northern England and Northern Wales later on as well. Particularly parts of eastern England up into eastern Scotland where we could see some thunderstorms bubbling up into the afternoon. They will be hit and miss, but they could bring some torrential downpours of rain, hail and frequent lightning as well. Some travel disruption is possible. Areas to the south generally staying drier, but in that sunshine seeing highs of 30, 31 degrees Celsius. Really is going to be quite a hot and sticky day for areas in the south and east. Holding on to some evening sunshine though, and the rain in the far northwest gradually clearing its way off and allowing clear intervals for many of us overnight. Our winds are shifting to a bit more of a westerly direction, and that's helping to feed in some slightly less humid air for tonight. So temperatures tonight will be dropping slightly lower compared to where they were last night, particularly in the west around 11, 12 degrees Celsius, still 14, 15 further east, but a touch more comfortable for sleeping compared to last night. Monday then starts off on a bright and sunny note for many of us, but we will start to see some scattered showers bubbling up, particularly across the northern half of the UK. Again, southern areas likely staying driest, and we'll see some sunny intervals throughout the afternoon, even if a little bit hazy at times. Temperatures, though, noticeably down compared to where we will see them today, only seeing highs of around 22, 23 degrees across areas of the south east. Some longer spells of rain, though, as we head towards the middle part of the week. Still some sunshine in between, and in that sunshine, feeling pleasantly warm around the low 20s. Enjoy your day. Bye-bye.
I joined GB News because I was sick and tired of not hearing my views being represented, not just mine, but so many people that I knew and spoke to.
I just couldn't get my voice out there. I couldn't say anything. I couldn't do anything. Whatever the narrative was, I kind of had to follow it.
GB News is there to provide a voice for those who have been ignored by the establishment media. We think different things, we've got a different style.
GB News is here to be optimistic and positive about the future.
It's real kind of dynamic and flowing, with the audience very much at the heart of it, like a big family.
Here at GB News, we talk about the things that matter to you.
Hearing the voices from right across our towns and cities, especially our towns.
All sides of the argument represented with a heavy dose of opinion.
We're on a mission here to make a difference.
And the GB News family really is here for you, and whatever time of day you can watch or listen.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
The Jubes and Kerr, we tackle the issues of the day with real, robust debate, both sides of the fence, battling it out with me in the middle with my forthright opinions and views. And often really interesting things happen because you start with a position and then by the end of the debate you find actually, well, I might not have thought about that one.
What we need in this country is 2 new political parties.
You should maybe think about doing a 2024 calendar. I'm Michelle Dewberry and I'm keeping you company right through until 7 o'clock this evening.
GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's watching.
Weeknights on GB News from 6 p.m. You'll always get drama.
Please stop, Michelle.
I know, yeah.
Please stop.
Should I just shut up?
Romance.
You like me, I like you. There you go.
There you are. Well, don't tell anybody.
Adventure.
Da-da-da-da-dum, etc.
That's the whole point. But
and action.
Sergeant Green, my superstar panel, they're already at it. They're fighting. It's going to be quite a show.
Only on GB News. Britain's watching.
Good morning, 7 o'clock on Sunday, the 25th of June. Today, it's been 24 hours of mayhem. Wagner fighters are starting to withdraw, but how will the failed Russian insurrection affect the war in Ukraine?
And it's been a disastrous week for the government. After terrible news for the economy and then a dive in the polls, can Rishi Sunak actually recover in time?
It's the last day of Glastonbury today, and Sir Elton John will be headlining and bringing 4 collaborators of his choosing on stage tonight for what's going to be his last ever UK show. Stephanie Tetchy's there. We'll bring the latest live later.
And you'll be interested in what the weather's going to look like today, won't you?
A hot and humid Sunday for some of us, the chance of thunderstorms for others. Join me later on for the full GB News weather forecast.
Morning to you, I'm Stephen Dixon.
And I'm Anne Diamond, and this is Breakfast on GB News.
We've set you off with this jobs thing.
I wonder if Elton John rings his mates and gets mates rates for them.
Oh, I don't know.
Does he just ask them a favour? I mean, he's clearly going to bring 4 of his old mates on stage.
No, they'll be getting shed loads of cash.
Do you think they will?
Yeah.
So he'll have made it part of his deal, won't he?
Yeah.
With Glastonbury.
Yeah, no, they'll be getting loads of money for that. Keith in Preston, I love this. Keith says, I was a computer consultant for most of my career and I'm often asked for advice on technical issues, but I retired 12 years ago and the technology's moved on, so my grandchildren know more than I do.
Oh.
I can understand that.
Aussie Beth, morning Aussie Beth. We haven't heard from you for a while.
No.
Aussie Beth says, I was a counsellor for many years and I find that people around me seem very eager to share their secrets with me, despite the fact that I no longer work like that. The biggest downfall of that career, though, is being able to keep work and relationships separate, because you can't do both.
No. Kerry says, I'm a solicitor and I get asked all the time by people I know to do their wills or for advice on family disputes. You can't do that for free.
No, you can't really, can you? Clive says, I was a telephone engineer for the then GPO. I was always asked if I could put in an extension phone long before cordless or mobile phones were around, usually with a rotary dial, which today's kids have never used.
No.
That's interesting. I hadn't really thought of that.
No.
Would a youngster nowadays know what to do with a dial phone? We've got one over there, actually.
No, probably not, actually.
No.
Probably not.
And that was the whole point, but that's why we have 999 is 999, because it's the most difficult one to do 3 times. So,
oh, yeah, never thought of that.
Oh,
well,
but,
there
you
you
know,
go.
it's not the same on a mobile or whatever you do. You
No.
It's just a fascinating thing, isn't it, how time does move on?
It does, but I'm just fascinated by all the different jobs that you've got there. Oh, and I've got to mention, because we've had an email through from Kay and David in Ascot. It said, lovely to meet Stephen yesterday outside a coffee shop in Marlow.
Oh, that's right.
And you know, it was lovely. I was in there. Daniel, my husband, was having some dental surgery. And you know, I love it when people just go, oh, oh, it's you. And then just come over and have a chat. They say, oh, do you mind us talking to you? It's like, no, it's brilliant. Love it.
But sometimes, though, they come up and say, oh, it's you. Who are you now?
Yeah,
And you have to then say, I don't know.
But it was lovely. It was lovely to meet you both. And I met another couple later on in Tame who were very friendly. It's lovely. We get spotted, and people come and talk to us more now than ever did. 20-odd years on Sky, people would go, oh, but no one ever came over to talk. And I think it's because you know that we're all just family.
Yeah.
And we're just like you.
Because we chat more, I think, as well. We chat with you, don't we? I mean, and listen to what you have to say. Where not many programmes do that, do they?
No, so it's lovely. So thank you both for coming up and saying hello. I just really like it. It's really nice. Now, what looked like a mutiny in Russia yesterday appears to have been called off overnight. The mercenary Russian fighting group, the Wagner Group, led by Yevgeny Prigozhin, had already taken over the southern city of Rostov-on-Don and were marching towards Moscow.
Yeah, and it seemed to frighten Putin because he was said to have fled the Kremlin. It almost looked like civil war might break out. But then last night, a deal seemed to have been done.
Well, earlier we spoke to Robert Fox, defence editor at the Evening Standard.
It's the tale of two real chances, and they've been in it together since Putin rose to power. This is the history lecture. A lot of deep history in the papers. No, you want shallow history. It's when they knew that they could grab all kinds of goodies when they were around the mayoralty of Petersburg at the beginning of this century. And Prigozhin and Putin have been buddies. Prigozhin, who'd done jail time, was the caterer. Yeah. And that's how he made his initial fortune with the Concord Catering Company.
Yeah, because there are lots of photographs of him...
serving. He was always known as Putin's chef. Then he started cooking cyber because he got into hacking through a thing called the IRA, the Internet Research Agency, very much involved in whatever was going on, and not in 2016. But it was a big trial run of really disrupting Western elections at that time. I say no more about that. And he's sort of been around with a bunch of gangsters, but became more and more essential to what Russia was doing in Syria and in Libya, and then started stuffing its pockets, which is where Wagner is now, in West Africa, with Mali and around there. This is important because a lot of money is being talked about. They don't need that much money because they've gone in as guards and security in an unstable situation. Gold mines, mineral resources and so on, and way down. And that's how it works. And what Prigozhin's team will be saying to him, and the gang will be saying, you've got to keep us going as a corporation. Back to what was going on yesterday and before is, I think, a lot of these people who were in very serious jail terms for murder and worse, some of them, they wanted to get out of the fighting where they'd had a terrible time in Bakhmut. We are not up for the meat grinder anymore, and we don't want to go back to jail. That's what they were saying. Oh. If you saw them hanging around the images of Rostov-on-Don, very good place to go because it's where you run the logistics into Ukraine. They didn't look as if they were cooing anything because there were people chatting to them, there were people taking selfies with them. I mean, if you're doing a military takeover, wouldn't you build up checkpoints? Wouldn't you have sandbags outside the vital communications centre? And this thing of going on the road, yes, it was probably a string of about a couple of dozen vehicles, but it wasn't a takeover. And even with 25,000, if they had them, they couldn't have taken over Moscow.
No, but I mean, there is this talk of, I don't know whether we believe it or not, of Putin going into hiding and all the rest of it. Could this, even though this has ended, could it be destabilising?
Putin looked very shaky on the telly yesterday morning, unusually so. Point two, state broadcasting, for once, did not know what to say. Was there going to be a deal? Was Prigozhin going to try and take over in the Kremlin? It was all up in the air. Because I'm saying this is the odd couple. It's the story of these two going together. And I guess Putin himself, if he was half aware, knew that Prigozhin was going to do something. but he didn't know what. And by the way, from the beginning of the week, I think the Western intelligence agencies, certainly US and UK, I was getting very odd noises from various places. They thought something was up.
Mm.
It's a fascinating situation.
I wanted to ask Robert once, how does he know so much about this? Is he on the phone to people all the time? People he bumped into, people he got to know, in various, I don't know, embassies or whatever. How does he get to know what he knows?
Very well connected.
Very well connected, yeah. And very careful about giving anything away too much as well.
But what is it all going to mean for Ukraine? All of this.
I don't think we can possibly know yet.
No, but if the Wagner group aren't fighting in Ukraine anymore and they're the tough boys, then where does that leave the Russian army? And we did ask Robert that, actually. We'll try and clip that up for you a little bit later on. It is 9 minutes past 7. Let's bring you up to date with some of the other stories today.
Well, police in Canada are assessing whether they're going to launch a full criminal investigation into the Titan submersible that imploded, killing 5 people in the North Atlantic. It's the Transportation Safety Board of Canada, and it's interviewing those who were on board the Polar Prince ship, which was the support vessel. Inspectors say the investigation could take up to 2 years.
All state secondary schools in England now have a defibrillator. The government says secondary schools got priority because the risk of cardiac arrest does increase with age. The Department for Health, though, says the devices will be rolled out in primary and special schools by the end of the summer term.
And the Princess of Wales teamed up with the tennis champion Roger Federer to celebrate Wimbledon ball boys and girls. Kate joined the 8-time Wimbledon champ and watched a training session where the youngsters were trained, obviously, and hoping to impress the selectors and then be chosen for the tournament, which starts next week, I think. In July, first week in July anyway. The Princess, who is the club's patron, has praised the hard work of the ball boys and girls, describing them as amazingly professional.
Why do they have to do that? And then...
Yes. Well, to show I've got a ball for you.
Oh, is that what it is?
Yeah. And they're all very, and I always think, I feel sorry for them, actually, because they hold the sweaty towels as well, don't they?
Yeah. Disgusting.
But I wondered what you were going to do when you did that.
No, I just spotted it on that bit of vision.
Yes,
I just thought,
they always
do
that.
I'd forgotten about that.
And then they drop the ball like that, don't they?
Yeah, rather than just sort of going... So oops, I have to pick that up in a bit, otherwise I get told off. But no, it's funny, the technique...
There will be a reason.
There will be a reason.
You know, I suppose when you're the tennis player and your mind is totally on the game and everything, you look around, you need to see something that's utterly recognisable, so you know where the next ball is coming from, I guess.
Yes, there you go. If you've ever done it, professionally or otherwise...
Love to hear from you, yeah.
GBviews at gbnews.com.
Now, it's been a very tough week for the Conservative Party as the interest rate was put up for the 13th consecutive time, and that became then the highest level since 2008.
Yes, of course. That's the mortgage time bomb, then, isn't it, that everyone's been talking about. And elsewhere, as a result of all of this, of course, a YouGov poll shows Tory support has fallen to 22%. That's the lowest since February and only 3 points higher than the lowest rating this Parliament. And that was after Liz Truss's mini-budget.
It's all a huge headache if you're a Tory. Joining us now is broadcaster and author Christine Hamilton. And a lovely, lovely morning for you today. Have you got the Tory headache?
Well, no, because I have to confess, I haven't... Confess, it's not a confession. I haven't voted Tory since 1997. But
wow,
yes, it is a headache because I'm obviously Conservative with a small c, and the last thing I want is a Keir Starmer government. But I'm afraid the Tories they're held below the waterline. I honestly think people come on various television programmes and say, oh, yes, Rishi Sunak can pull this together, he can bring it round. But I think it's too late. I really don't think he can. The opinion polls are falling away. They've blown it, I'm afraid. And there's an air about this government that there was about the John Major government in 97, a sort of fin de siècle or almost pills in the bunker air, isn't it? What are they going to do? They've brought it on themselves. They've failed to deliver a proper Brexit. They've failed to get a control of immigration. And this mortgage situation, which they are not totally responsible for, the Bank of England has quite a lot to answer for, but The COVID lockdown, what did it do? It doubled the national debt, and we're all paying for it now. And the people who've got mortgages are going to be suffering very, very badly. And for some of them, it will be a question of drawing in your horns elsewhere. But for others, there is no slack, and they may lose their homes. And there's a call for the government to step in and help people with mortgages, but you can't. They're trying, they're sort of trimming around the edges, but you can't give them positive financial help because that isn't fair to the renters, I'm afraid. I mean, taking out a mortgage is a risk. If they get through this very rocky patch, sorry, it's early in the morning, if they get through this rocky patch, inflation will ensure that the value of their asset, they get the payback from that. But no, I think we're going to see some desperately difficult financial situations up and down the country.
The problem with this is, though, Christine, isn't it, that although a lot of people, and you look at the polls, a lot of people are saying, well, this government isn't doing what we want them to do, therefore someone else has got to come in and do it, which may well happen when there's a general election. But the problem is that there's no sign, is there, that under a Labour government things would actually improve?
Absolutely not, no. But you get to the stage when better the devil you don't know than the devil you know, the reverse of what one normally thinks. And I think there's often, when a government's been in for a long time, or successive governments of a particular colour, time for change. It's a very, very powerful, and people think they can't be any worse. Well, frankly, they can, and we will discover that when they get in. But I think I cannot...
Oh, Christine.
Oh, apologies.
We've lost you.
Dropped out.
That's the internet for you. Jane in Liss agrees with her. She says, I'm a 70-year-old. I have voted Tory since I was 18, but I don't trust them anymore, so I can't vote for them no matter what they do now. Solving problems that they mostly created during the last 10-plus years won't save them. I'm all for independence in the House.
Yeah, do you know what? I'm not quite sure about independence.
Well, you couldn't create a government out of independence, could you?
Would you not end up with 650 different ideas rather than
yeah, but they might be at least
thought?
genuinely held ideas rather than whipped ideas.
Chris says, I will not vote Conservative again until all tax rises since 2010 are reversed, particularly those that have hammered small businesses.
See, that's going to be very fundamental as well, isn't it? Because, I mean, Tory party was always about the party of small businesses.
Yes.
And yet so many small businesses now are complaining that they're not being helped in any way at all. They're having to shut down. They can't keep going.
No, and that's the thing, these new business rates and all the rest of it, all very confusing, isn't it? Anyway, if you've got any thoughts on that, gbviews at gbnews.com.
Now. Yes.
Go on. No. Guess where she's gone?
Yeah, and guess who?
Yeah.
Steph. She's gone to Glastonbury. But as if by magic, she will be coming to a TV screen near you next.
First and foremost, I'm a GB News fan, and I was before I was working here. Just love the fact that we're asking the questions that a lot of establishment media won't ask.
With a bit of a twist, we not only want to inform you, but we want to keep you entertained.
It's worth the drive because you get in and the team's all ready and waiting, they're itching to go, and it's a proper little family.
GB News is the People's Channel.
It's the audience that makes the programme sing.
We're giving our viewers and our listeners a voice. I see the thousands of your letters, tweets, emails, you name it, coming in.
Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it?
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent you.
It's time for something different. It's time for GB News. I'm very patriotic. I believe in Britain. Our best days lie ahead.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Join us here on GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Join me, Patrick Christie's, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6. We tackle the day's news agenda like you've never seen before. It's high tempo, high octane, the most controversial topics, and the best guests. You will not be able to take your eyes and ears off it. I'm not afraid to ask the questions that you really want answered. 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my 2 comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
GB News has its own late-night paper preview show, Headliners, where comedians take you through the next day's top news stories. You don't have to bother reading the newspaper, we've got it covered for you. Headliners, every night at 11 p.m. and repeated every morning at 5 a.m. We won't send you to sleep like some of the other paper review shows out there. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, on Sunday mornings from 9:30, taking the politicians to task and breaking out of SW1 to see how their decisions are affecting you across the UK. Bursting the Westminster bubble every Sunday morning, only on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain's watching.
Every Sunday from 11. Join Michael Portillo.
There will be topical discussion, looking at the week before and the week to come. So kick back and relax at 11 a.m. on Sundays on GB News with me, Michael Portillo. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
What you get for breakfast is something that, if we do our jobs right, you will wake up to news that you didn't know the night before.
It's a conversation. It's not just me and Eamon.
We want to get to know you, and we want you to get to know us.
From 6, it's Breakfast with Eamon and Isabel.
Monday to Thursdays on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Hi, I'm Dan Wootton. You can watch me live on GB News Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. And did you know that you can also watch and listen live on our website, gbnews.com. You'll always be up to date on the latest breaking news, as well as enjoying the best stories, opinions and shows. You can even join the debate under our live player as you're watching. So head straight to gbnews.com on TV, radio and online. GB News, Britain's news channel.
7:20 morning to you. This is Breakfast with Stephen and Anne. Now, I've always been told if you don't ask, you don't get. Roy, hi Roy. It says, I listen to you every morning. Can I have a shout out, please? Yes, you can,
Yes,
Roy.
you can. Hi, Roy.
I'm running a half marathon this morning in Sharnbrook in Bedfordshire, and it's going to be hot.
Yeah.
Good luck.
Well, good luck. I hope you make a good time. And then we were asking about people's jobs and whether, when you're asked what your job is, you're then asked if you'll do mates rates or maybe something free. Ian says, I'm a hotel receptionist in London, and I have been for 30 years plus. It's almost weekly I'm asked for mates rates with free breakfast.
Oh.
He said, both of you can have mates rates at the hotel, by the way.
Do we get a free
Thank
breakfast?
you.
I love this from Lisa, who says, the first thing we were told on our first day of nurse training was never tell anyone you're a nurse. It stood me in good stead for the last 30-odd years.
I can see why.
Yes, I am a nurse, and no, I don't want to look at whatever that is.
Yes, exactly. You'd get asked all the time.
You would.
Julie says, I'm a travel advisor for a very large and popular company. Anne will like us because we do cruises too. Do you get asked for free cruises? I'll bet.
You do. Kieran says, when anyone finds out I'm a trader, they always ask me about Bitcoin. That, Kieran, is because nobody understands
it except you.
Honestly, I can't tell you how many guests I've interviewed about Bitcoin over the years, and at the end, I've
No, I still don't.
no clear at the end of it.
Absolutely not.
Don't know what it is. How do you mine Bitcoin when none of it exists? Oh.
When it doesn't exist anyway.
So, Kieran, what is Bitcoin?
Yeah, exactly. Teresa says, I work in a well-known supermarket and customers seem to think that I spend all night putting up the prices on the shelves. So I wish I was able to do that because I'd make the prices rock bottom.
Yeah. Teresa, though, how is it that whenever you're... Because I do this in the supermarket and there's always something... You constantly rearrange it and I can't find stuff. And you end up having to say, excuse me, can you tell me where this is? And they always know.
Yes, B1,
yeah,
whatever.
They always know.
Well, it's because they spent all night putting them there.
It's impressive, though.
Yeah, I like it when you go, you pop into a supermarket or something, and you happen to have got it at the right time that they're going around changing the prices.
Ah.
If I don't know whether they always do it at the same time. I don't think so. But if you're there when they're doing it, you just follow them around. Right, I love one of those because it's now half price.
One of the things they're doing now, of course, all down the cost of living crisis, so it's a good thing they're doing it. But if you have a loyalty card, then there's different prices.
Really?
Oh, yeah. And sometimes it's a few pennies off, and sometimes it's pounds off. So if you've got the loyalty card, it's like, the loyalty card price is, £1.50 off or something. And so I just look for those yellow labels and just get the loyalty card discount on it.
Yeah.
And the lovely thing is that when they click it all through the till and it comes up at whatever, and then you give give them the card.
That's when you give them the card and they take it off.
And it, like £10 or £15 disappears off your bill.
Wow! Wow!
Very satisfying.
Which supermarket is this, Stephen?
Several of them.
Really?
Do it. Sainsbury's do it. Tesco's do it. Yeah.
So, and you've got all those loyalty cards?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
My goodness, I've learned something today.
Oh, yeah. You've got to have your got to pick up your loyalty points.
See, I always don't like the idea of loyalty card because I think it's just their way of trying to draw you in.
Well, it is, yeah.
But if they actually do give you money back, then that's...
Yeah, if you get money
reasonable.
off.
Yeah, you've got to do everything you can at the moment.
If they want to track my shopping habits, feel free.
Well, that's another thing. It's all data. It's mining data.
I don't care. If they want to know how much pasta I buy or how many pints of milk I'm buying, well, I don't care. Let them know.
Don't think so, yeah.
Free world. Anyway, so that's a good way of saving a bit of money. Get a loyalty card. Now, it's the final day of Glastonbury. And while Guns N' Roses performed a triumphant debut performance at Worthy Farm, other artists haven't fared so lightly.
No, there is a bit of a controversy about how some artists have done and whether they were really good. Here to tell us all about it is the wonderful Stephanie Tecci. And, it looks like a lovely day there. And again, you're looking glamorous, not as though you've been lying in a tent all night.
Good morning, campers. Indeed, I'm actually glad this is going to be my last night of sleeping in a tent. I think it's starting to catch up with me now on day 5. I think I've had enough. But no, it has been a good weekend here at Glastonbury. Yesterday was all about the day of the Glasto Virgins, as I like to call them, the people who have not performed previously at Glasto. So we had that amazing headlining set from Guns N' Roses at the Pyramid Stage. That was 2 hours and a half of American rock. They brought out Dave Grohl, who's been lingering about here at Worthy Farm, so it was nice to see him again on stage. Another good first yesterday was Rick Astley. Actually, it was his first time performing at Glastonbury, and he opened the Pyramid set, and he had such a good crowd there. He was there from 12 o'clock in the afternoon, so it was definitely a day of a good first yesterday.
Was there any controversy?
Oh, can't have no Glastonbury without some controversy. We had Lana Del Rey. There's been this big issue about the lack of female performers on the bill for this year's Glastonbury, and Lana Del Rey was headlining at the other stage last night. But she was in a bit of a diva mode, and she arrived half an hour late. So fans weren't best pleased with her at all. When she got on stage, people were actually booing her. She said the reason why she had been taking so long was because she was finishing her hair and finishing getting styled as well. Glastonbury have a strict policy. After 11:45, there's no more music on the big stages. So Lana Del Rey's set got cut short. She continued singing through the microphone, but her time was up. And I think it's a lesson learned for her that she should always be on time when she's performing at Glasto.
Well, you'd think by now. I mean, it's just about being professional. You don't let your audience down if you're a big star or a musician. You just don't let the audience down. They come first.
Totally, and I think she thought she was bigger than Glastonbury because as soon as it got to 11:45, her mic was switched off. She was forced to come into the crowd to try and mix with the crowd as a kind of way of saying sorry. But, there's so many artists who would love to be on that stage, and the fact that she was half an hour late, she had a bit of a bone to pick with Glastonbury about how her name appeared on the billing because they had done it in alphabetical order and her name looked pretty small. So she was even, threatening to pull out of the performance altogether. So, people are thinking, was this her way of making a point last night on stage? But, the fans weren't happy at all.
No, I bet they weren't. Mind you, they'll be happy tonight. No doubt, because Sir Elton John is the talk of the town, of course, with his last UK show and his 4 special guests.
Yes, it is the talk of the campsite here at Worthy Farm because I think people are taking their bets to think who is he going to be bringing out. And we've already seen that Britney Spears has arrived at Bristol Airport. So she could be one of the big 4 that will be joining Sir Elton John tonight. If it is Britney Spears, this will be massive because she hasn't performed in the UK in over a decade or more. So it'll be quite interesting to see her and Sir Elton John on stage. But there's other big names that people are throwing in, such as Lady Gaga, Dua Lipa, maybe Harry Styles, Ed Sheeran. So I definitely think Elton John's going to go out with a bang tonight.
You looking forward to it? You're going to queue up?
I'm hoping I can be right at the front, but there's other acts which I'm more excited about today. Blondie at 12:15 at the Pyramid Stage. I cannot wait to see Debbie Harry. Again, I think it's just going to be a full day of so many good acts to see. You almost want to be everywhere at once at Glastonbury, and it's so hard because you miss people. Like yesterday, I missed the Pretenders, and I was not happy about that. It's not often you see Chrissy Hynde in the UK.
No, I tell you, I mean, they always pull in some really big names, don't they? I mean, they must fork out a lot of money for them.
Well, it becomes like a Glasto family. Like yesterday I went to see Billy Idol and I had to do a double take. I was like, is that Billy Idol on stage? And Glastonbury, I think once they get people as a part of the Glasto family, people are always more than happy to come back to Worthy Farm. It's one of the biggest festivals in the world and there's such a nice feeling and there's everything, no matter what your age. I've seen people up to the age of 70 dancing by, dancing by a 17-year-old. So, it's definitely the most happiest place on earth, as they call Glastonbury.
Yeah. And it's not just music either, is it? There are lots of places where there are speakers talking about interesting subjects, and even politicians like Ed Miliband was there.
Yeah, so I went to a talk with Ed Miliband yesterday, and he was talking about climate change. He was quite passionate about it, having a few digs, of course, about the Conservative government and their lack of action towards climate change. But it was a bit controversial because there was a protester who was in the audience who felt like they needed to get some things off their chest against Ed. So that's the only thing with these kind of things. You do meet a lot of activists who will be sitting in those political forums waiting to have their says with some politicians.
Yeah, they managed to get some awful pictures. Can we play those pictures of Mr. Miliband again? Because if you're listening on the radio, the first shot looks like he's trying to eat a bacon sandwich.
Oh no, not again! Never do that again.
No, not that shot. It was one of the first one we played. He's a
better talker now. He's not in any sort of power.
Yeah.
Isn't he?
They often are once they get out of that sort of pressure. Never mind. Oh, now, before you go, Steph, I did hear someone say that one of these four guests tonight may be Kate Bush. Have you heard that one?
Oh, no, that is a new name I have not heard. I think that would be quite interesting because Kate Bush, like Sir Elton John, has just enjoyed this revival of people getting into her music thanks to Stranger Things. So that would be quite interesting. I've got so much anticipation right now. I just want to know who those names are. But we won't have to wait for long.
No.
Will it all be a surprise or will they announce at some stage who they're going to...
No, it's all going to be a surprise. Yeah, all going to be a surprise. It's going to be a 2.5-hour set. And Elton John's got over 30 albums to his name. So I can imagine there's going to be so much music that we're familiar with that he'll be playing tonight.
Yes.
Yeah, be all the big stuff. All the big stuff. Right, Steph, we're going to talk to you a little bit later on so you can get back in the leopard print tent and have a snooze for an hour and then we'll catch up with you in a bit.
That sounds like a Glasto pan.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. It's always fun, isn't it, when we talk to Steph at Glastonbury, because she's the only one awake. Everybody else is inside their tents.
They've all got hangovers in the tents. Yeah. God love her. And there she is, 7:30 in the morning, dolled up, looking fabulous.
Absolutely.
There you go. I was just looking at Billy Idol. I can't believe it. He's 67.
Gosh.
Which I know is not like a great age these days, but the fact that he's still going, because I didn't know he'd been doing anything for the last 20-odd years.
No. And that's the joy of Elton's set tonight, I think, is that probably those four friends will be of a certain age that, people probably haven't heard from for a while. And it'll be a great joy. And they'll be able to do some of those big numbers.
Hope so. I hope so. I sort of hope it's not Harry Styles or...
Yeah, exactly.
You want some of the classic...
Britney will go down a storm.
Oh, can you imagine?
Because she is sensational still, even though nobody's seen her perform for ages, because of her backstory, I suppose, mostly.
Yeah.
But Lady Gaga would be wonderful too.
Oh, she's a performer.
She's got such a voice.
I can't imagine Britney and Lady Gaga
both in the same.
No. On the same set.
One or t'other.
One or t'other. But if Britney's turned up at Bristol Airport,
yeah, Exactly.
There you go. So that's one. That's one.
She's definitely
ticked
in
off.
the area, isn't she? Yes.
So that's interesting. Yeah, it'd be quite one to see. I won't be staying up to watch it.
No, I won't.
But I may have a flick through tomorrow on the catch up or whatever. Anyway, there you go. Look, we've got the newspapers heading away very, very shortly. This is GB News.
Like all families, we have arguments every now and then, but actually we agree on what the mission of GB News is, and that's the most fundamentally important thing.
GB News provides the kind of platform that lets all voices be heard.
We don't hold back. We're free to say what we really think. Just because some people who live in a tiny little Westminster bubble think that their particular story is important, that's not the most important story for me.
And often there will be difficult stories, stories that you won't find on the establishment media.
Because what people think in the north of England may be very different to what they're thinking in the home counties.
We're going to carry on telling the world what life is really like for households up and down the UK.
We love to be in your car, in your kitchen as you're having your breakfast. Whatever you're doing, you are part of the show. If it matters to you, it matters to us.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News,
the People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Monday to Thursday, 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. Join me, Dan Wootton. I'll bring you the sharpest takes and hottest debates.
Do you not believe in prison? I don't believe in prison.
I'm completely stunned. I guarantee you there'll be no spin, no bias, no censorship.
I actually was personally quite offended by it.
And no reason to go to bed. So I guess they've always been quite woke. That's Dan Wootton tonight on TV, radio and online. Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. on GB News. The People's Channel. Britain's news channel.
Nightmare commute. Kick it up a gear with me, Patrick Christie's, at drive time, 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News Radio. You can listen online and on DAB+, on the smart speaker app and on the GB News app. And if you've got an Alexa, all you have to say is, Alexa, play GB News. We're also on TuneIn and the Radio Player apps. From the school run to rush hour, get revved up with me, Patrick Christie's, on GB News and GB News Radio.
So Jubes & Co, we tackle the issues of the day with real robust debate, both sides of the fence, battling it out with me in the middle with my forthright opinions and views. And often really interesting things happen because you start with a position and then by the end of the debate you find actually, well, I might not have thought about that one.
What we need in this country is 2 new political parties.
You should maybe think about doing a 2024 calendar. I'm Michelle Dewberry and I'm keeping you company right through until 7 o'clock this evening.
GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's watching.
Westminster is going around in ever-decreasing circles, followed by the media. Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it? Join me at 7 p.m, Mondays to Thursdays on Farage, here on GB News. We will have open, rational debate. We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this. Join us here on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain is watching.
You've probably seen politicians interviewed 1,000 times, but we do it differently. We find out who they really are, we don't shout, we chat, and hopefully we bring a bit of light, not just heat. Did you know Kate Moss?
Apparently.
Do you have a pair of jeans or a pair of jeans?
No, of course I don't. What would I do with them?
My friends are like, oh my God, what's she doing now?
Join me every Sunday at 6 for Gloria Meets, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
7:37, you're watching and listening to Breakfast with Stephen and Anne. Morning to Sean and Mary.
Oh, yes.
Watching from Gozo in Malta with coffee, as we always do here on a Sunday morning. Oh. And just to say, Stephen, Mary is your #1 fan.
Oh, that's nice. Well done, Mary.
That's very kind, Mary. Thank you very much indeed.
Yes, the idea of just sort of sitting there in Gozo with a nice cup of coffee and watching the telly. That's lovely.
Yeah, I bet it's lovely out there. Have you got a nice view? Probably.
Of course you have. Probably a nice little balcony or something.
Oh, nice.
Love Malta.
Don't send off, she'll be off. I've never been, but I really fancy going.
Oh, it's wonderful, yeah. Do you remember talking about old phones? With the rotary dial? Sorry. Hair, flies, everything in this today. And whether today's children would know how to dial on a rotary dial phone. Robin says, my old GPO dial phone, built in 1965, still works perfectly. When my 6-year-old granddaughter came to visit, she hadn't a clue. Unfortunately, once she got the hang of it, she kept asking if she could phone people. Huge bill.
But does it still... Because it doesn't work on tones, it clicks. Does that still work on the system?
Well, it must do if she keeps ringing up.
It must do. See, we've got one over there, but actually I think it's a push-button thing, is it?
Oh, that's a cheat, is it?
Is that a push-buttony one?
Don't know.
Don't
I'll
know.
get it in a minute. Janice says our grandson is 8 years old and we have an old-style dial telephone and he's fascinated by it. He loves dialling his mum or dad on it, though he forgets you can't walk around with it.
Yeah. That's the thing. Mind you, it takes ages to dial a number, doesn't it, because of all the clicking?
Yeah, and if you make a mistake, you have to start all over again. Yes, it does. But that was the way it was done.
Do you know when mobiles first came out, though? I worked in radio, and we had one of like the cheese, big cheese things, and the nice thing, when
big cheese things?
You know, they look like big lumps of wedges of cheese, didn't they?
The phone
the phones.
Did. Oh yes.
And they. And when I was covering Abby Humphreys, that girl in Nottingham who was snatched from the Queen's Medical Centre when she was just a few hours old.
Gosh, you remember that.
And so I was doing all the press conferences and things, and you could use it as a microphone stand at the news conferences.
Oh.
So it came in quite useful. No one ever rang me on it.
No. But before that, if you went out with a mobile phone, it was a suitcase.
Oh, yeah.
It was, It was a suitcase with a phone attached to it on a curly cord. And people used to do that.
And you think that's just the battery?
Yeah.
It was just the battery. And now look at them. Oh.
I know.
I'm going to get one of these new foldable things.
Well, like Eamon's got one, hasn't he?
Oh, yeah, well, he's got
it broke the other day and half of the screen. So he was getting text messages, but only half of them.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh, well,
the right-hand side.
He needs to upgrade. His quite a few years old now.
Oh. So you're going to get the very latest.
There's a new one coming out.
Mr. Gadget.
Very soon. And I think I might get it.
Are they doing them yet where you can roll them? The
rollable ones,
yes.
No, there's concept phones like that, but not actual...
They haven't brought them out yet?
No,
Mind you, that would be a nuisance, wouldn't it?
No, because they do it automatically. It just... Bzzz.
Oh. Yes.
Love all of that.
In his element.
Yes, it keeps me happy for days thinking about it. I spend half my life on YouTube looking at these things.
Do you?
Oh, yeah, I do, yeah.
Shopaholic as well.
I love it. Well, I haven't bought them. I just look at them and pretend I'm going to buy one eventually, maybe. If I can get another mortgage to pay for it.
Well, you don't want a mortgage at the moment. Oh, no. Should we take a look at what's in today's papers?
We better had. Sunday Telegraph leading with Russia, as most of the papers are. Mutineers turning back, it says, after striking a deal with the Russian president.
And the Mirror says Putin was pushed to the brink. As a bloodbath now, they say, has been averted after the mercenaries, for some reason, turned back.
More on the Wagner Group in the Sunday Times as humiliated Putin clings on.
And then, as well as talking about Russia, on the front of the Sunday Express, they're playing it big with a picture of sporty Princess of Wales, and because she was playing tennis with Roger Federer at Wimbledon yesterday. They were looking at the work of the ball boys and girls.
Yeah, that's a great shot. An action shot, as they say. Let's go through some of those then with Claire Pearsall and Lewis Oakley, who join us now. Good to see you both this morning.
Thank you.
Claire, let's have a look at the Sunday Mirror, should we? Looking at the mortgage crisis.
Yeah, this is quite interesting take here in the column, Keir Moody's column in the Sunday Mirror, looking at focus groups. So a slightly different view of mortgages and the current financial crisis. And he starts off by saying an accusation constantly levelled at the current Labour Party is that it operates by focus group. And throughout the piece, it looks like the more you are involved in these kind of focus groups, the less likely you are to have a mortgage. So it's quite an interesting take on this, that they tend to be the more well-off, and it doesn't matter whether they are Labour supporters or Conservatives. If you take part in focus groups, you are largely mortgage-free. So you're going to get a bit of a skewed opinion when it comes to financial markets and what's going on currently with mortgages, because it doesn't affect you. So if the Labour Party are now basing their fiscal policy upon the outcomes of these focus groups, then it is going to be skewed in a really odd way.
Yeah.
Because I think if you look into the real world and you start talking to people, and We all know at the moment it's a really, really worrying time. There are people who are going up, their mortgages are going up tenfold. They are doubling at the very least for some people, making it extremely unaffordable. So if you are going to look at policies, unfortunately, with this kind of any kind of financial policy that's going to affect mortgages is going to take a long time to come to fruition. The interest rates are going up, inflation isn't coming down, there's this real bubble about to burst, which we've seen in the past. So you need to be focusing on that.
I wonder how many members of Cabinet have mortgages.
Well, and I think that's really interesting. And I think if you also look at the shadow front bench, there are an awful lot of people there that perhaps are mortgage-free as well. So it isn't affecting some people in the same way. However, they represent constituencies across the country.
They do, but they don't feel the pain of it, do they? It's different. Because if you're Rishi Sunak, not only do you not have a mortgage, but you live in a world where nobody you know has a mortgage either. So you're not getting this visceral, as you said, effect back at you, that this is really dead important.
It is. I mean, my own mortgage comes up in a year's time, and I'm frantically now looking at what's going to happen, how much this could cost, what we can do about it. And it's a really frightening time, and that's 12 months away. Yeah. Some people are going through that right now, and if you can't afford your mortgage, what are you going to do? There is no give in people's budgets.
I'll tell you what worries me slightly, though. I mean, on the policy side of all this, focus groups have their uses, right? But a lot of this is common sense, isn't it? We all know how it feels. It's common sense. Why do these politicians not just employ a bit of common sense about what needs to be done?
But I do think as well, and I'm not trying to reverse where the buck stops with this, but I do think people need to, at least email your local politicians, because I think we kind of, have a little bit of moan about it, talk to our friends, obviously speak to the mortgage advisor. How many people are actually going to, go and see their local MPs and saying, look, this is it, this is what the finances look like, and if they don't know anyone that's got a mortgage, well, then the people in the constituency need to go in and make sure that this is high on the priority list. I think we need to forget that sometimes, to go and speak to them.
Well, most backbenchers have a mortgage, don't they? I mean, the backbenchers are a bit more normal.
But to your point on focus groups, if you, in politics, go out there and say, this is our policy and we've worked it out and it's very sort of common sense, and people are going to say, well, what have you got to back that up? And it's that old problem of you need to have some evidence, unfortunately. So they may go for the unscientific way of a group of people sitting around having coffee and biscuits and discussing things. You've always got to have that backup, say, well, this is what people have told us. This is why we're doing it. Normal people. It doesn't mean that your focus group is a sort of a snapshot of the United Kingdom, because it's unlikely to be, as is proved in this article. But unfortunately, in politics, you can't do anything unless you've got a group of people, you've got some evidence, some data or something behind.
Yeah, but as Lewis says, there's tons of emails. If your inbox is full of emails from people who are desperate and need you as their MP to do something about it, that's evidence, isn't it?
Absolutely is, and they need to listen more to those, because those emails that come in are incredibly important, and people's stories, I think, would shape policy a lot better than some clinical list of data that you get from, say, banks or building societies or whatever it is.
Yeah, fair point. Fair point.
Why, Lewis, is the Mail on Sunday looking at how people in their late 50s are feeling about things?
Yeah.
This is quite sad, and I can't...
This is really quite sad. So people in their late 50s feel the least valued, and it's a quite high percentage. So 39% of people in their late 50s are saying that they actually feel, and the word they use here is insignificant. So that's horrible. And it kind of boiling down into some of the reasons here. They feel sidelined at work. They maybe have a declining social life and also potentially declining health as they're reaching those late 50s. However, the kind of good side of the story, if you can call it that, is that all declines to about 15% when you reach 70. So you kind of have this horrible period at the late 50s where you feel just undervalued and not having an impact.
Maybe you feel the age is coming your way. By the time you get to 70, you know age has come your way and you feel much more relaxed about it.
Yeah, you could well do. And I think and it's quite interesting in this piece where it says it's when you reach the over 70s, you don't really care about others and what they think of you. And I think that would be a particularly nice place to be. I think when you're younger, I think you care a lot about what people think you are.
Yeah.
And as you get older...
I got to that about 35, though, of thinking I don't care anymore. People don't like me, I don't really care.
I was going to say, I mean, I don't suffer from it either. I don't really care. But I know a lot of people do, and especially if you're starting out in the workplace and starting off in your career, you're really concerned about what people think, how you come across. And I think as you get older, you realise it isn't so important anymore. So that's the joy of getting slightly older. But this whole sort of 50s thing, when you're looking down a barrel of, that's worrying, that I'm suddenly going to feel very insecure again.
Oh, it's Nigel. Is he late 50s?
A little bit, yes.
Yeah, a little bit late 50s.
A little bit late 50s. I mean, he'll.
Well, all you can say is don't worry.
Oh, but he can't be worried, is he?
Eventually you'll hit 70 and you'll be happy. Don't worry about it.
And that's what I shall tell him when I get home. But he does.
Don't think he'll
the
appreciate
little
it.
insecurities do come in, and he cares a lot more than I do. Whereas I take this sort of attitude: it doesn't matter.
No, doesn't matter.
I think
Anyway,
as
Nigel,
well-
everyone loves you, Nigel. You're a terrific bloke.
It's not mentioned here, but I do think as well, grandkids as well, having grandkids, obviously not everyone has them, but I spent so much time with my grandparents when I was younger, and I think that it really helps bring them to life. And also, you don't have to do the hard parenting.
That's
you
right,
can just do the fun stuff. And I think that's, I mean, I can't wait for, in the future to be the crazy grandparent that's, breaking all the rules and being outrageous.
What worries me about this, though, is that we are talking as if late 50s is old age.
Yes, I know.
It's not. It's you're just entering middle age.
But then maybe that's why. I know. I mean, we've all had certain ages you reach and you think, oh, no, I don't want to be 40. I don't want to be 50, and we have an idea of what it's going to be like. That means I'm really old.
But I think
Are you embracing it, though, Anne? Because you're the eldest on the panel this morning.
Yeah.
Your next big birthday is...
Oh, I do it.
It's not that, 12 months away.
Again, it's one of those...
But do you just embrace it and go, actually, sod it?
No, yes.
Sod it.
Yeah. Numbers are a tyranny.
Yeah.
I've always felt that. It's like people who get on the scales and worry about their weight as to the number. Numbers are a tyranny because everybody's different. And one person's age 70 is going to be entirely different from another's, isn't it? Yeah. I mean, look at the things that happen to you health-wise and everything.
But I wonder if there is a bit of a culture change, because if, I think about when I grew up and thought about, what a 30-year-old looked like, and was like, oh, my God, that's so old, and now I'm in my 30s. But I wonder if just the culture is changing. I'm seeing, if I think about when I was with my grandparents, they were kind of their 60s at the time. They weren't really going out and stuff, whereas my parents, as they're kind of reaching mid-50s, they're out and they're on holidays and they're doing... So I think the culture has changed a little bit.
Sorry, your parents are reaching mid-50s?
Yeah.
Get out.
Honestly, just think how that makes me feel. But I mean, 30, 40 years ago, certainly women of my age had white hair, sat in the corner in the comfiest chair in the house, didn't they? And people came to them.
Yeah.
That's right. And I think you always base it, as you were saying about the tyranny of numbers, you always base it on the way you've grown up and how you looked at people. And I remember looking at people in their 40s thinking, that's ancient.
Yes.
Yeah.
And now it really isn't. It's prime of life.
It is the prime of life. It is the prime of life.
Well, it's your job to make it the prime of life, isn't it, really?
Yeah.
Whatever age you are.
Yeah, no, it's all good. Now, Lewis, can we have a look at this? Women tear chunks from stripping hunks. To the Sunday Mirror.
So, rowdy women are being thrown out of West End shows for groping and even biting male strippers. So this is performers at Magic Mike Live say at least 2 women a week have been escorted out.
You've been told about that, Claire.
Didn't think anyone noticed. Sorry.
Honestly.
A bit of self-control needed here, really, to be honest. I mean, there is a serious point here around, that is clearly crossing a line. But yeah, I don't know. I think you said there was something as well that had happened. Was it Ladies' Day as well?
Yes. Behaviour of women at Royal Ascot. Wearing inappropriate clothing, showing off explicit tattoos. Now, I have no idea what that means, but the Daily Mail informed me that was what was happening. And behaving in a drunken manner. I think women have always been expected to sit in the corner and be quiet, and that has changed quite rightly over the decades. But the laddish behaviour that we saw in the 90s. I remember growing up with that kind of ladette behaviour, and then that was deemed to not be quite what they wanted, and it's come back. So it's one of these sort of cyclical things. And I think women are always held to very, very different standards to men, especially in these kind of circumstances. Going to something like strippers where it's all women together, they're all having a great time, but they are set to a very high standard, which, if you don't reach it, you're going to fail. And I think that women throughout the centuries have had that. We are always held to a different example to men, and we will continue to be. And it's
we
not
make more
right.
of a spectacle of ourselves when we fall off our 9-inch heels. And that's always those pictures from Ascot Ladies' Day and whatever.
Yes, it is.
It's always about ladies who've had a bit too much champagne and then fall off their heels and end up, with their dresses over their heads or something. So it may just be that we set ourselves impossible tasks of wearing mini skirts with high heels. I don't know.
But there's no better time to go out dressed like that. I mean, when you go to the races or something like that and you dress up and you look at the parts, but it really hurts wearing heels all day. Which is why you always put a pair of sort of flat flip-flops in your bag.
Well, thankfully, Lewis, we don't need to know about such things, do we?
Exactly.
Lovely. Thank you both very much indeed. Claire, Lewis, we'll catch up with you in the next hour. Lovely stuff. We've got lots more to come, of course, including the latest on the situation in Russia. Really, what next for President Putin after this supposed coup that then seems to have disappeared again? We'll keep you up to date on all the very latest developments. This is Breakfast on GB News.
Hello there, very good morning to you. I'm Jonathan Vautry here with your latest GB News weather forecast provided by the Met Office. After a warm and humid start to the day, there is the chance of some thunderstorms as we head into this afternoon. They're being driven by this area of low pressure that is moving its way in from the northwest, and we are particularly watching this cold front as it gradually pushes its way eastwards, already providing some heavy outbreaks of rain to Northern Ireland, and then will eventually shift its way into Scotland, Northern England and Northern Wales later on as well. Particularly parts of eastern England up into eastern Scotland where we could see some thunderstorms bubbling up into the afternoon. They will be hit and miss, but they could bring some torrential downpours of rain, hail and frequent lightning as well. Some travel disruption is possible. Areas to the south generally staying drier, but in that sunshine seeing highs of 30, 31 degrees Celsius. Really is going to be quite a hot and sticky day for areas in the south and east. Holding on to some evening sunshine, though, and the rain in the far northwest gradually clearing its way off and allowing clear intervals for many of us overnight. Our winds are shifting to a bit more of a westerly direction, and that's helping to feed in some slightly less humid air for tonight. So temperatures tonight will be dropping slightly lower compared to where they were last night, particularly in the west around 11, 12 degrees Celsius, still 14, 15 further east, but a touch more comfortable for sleeping compared to last night. Monday then starts off on a bright and sunny note for many of us, but we will start to see some scattered showers bubbling up, particularly across the northern half of the UK. Again, southern areas likely staying driest, and we'll see some sunny intervals throughout the afternoon, even if a little bit hazy at times. Temperatures, though, noticeably down compared to where we will see them today, only seeing highs of around 22, 23 degrees across areas of the south east. Some longer spells of rain, though, as we head towards the middle part of the week. Still some sunshine in between, and in that sunshine, feeling pleasantly warm around the low 20s. Enjoy your day. Bye-bye.
First and foremost, I'm a GB News fan, and I was before I was working here. Just love the fact that we're asking the questions that a lot of establishment media won't ask.
With a bit of a twist, we not only want to inform you, but we want to keep you entertained.
It's worth the drive because you get in and the team's all ready and waiting, they're itching to go, and it's a proper little family.
GB News is the people's channel.
It's the audience that makes the programme sing.
We're giving our viewers and our listeners a voice. I see the thousands of your letters, tweets, emails, you name it, coming in.
Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it?
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent you.
It's time for something different. It's time for GB News. I'm very patriotic. I believe in Britain. Our best days lie ahead.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Join us here on GB News.
The people's channel.
Britain's news channel.
Join me, Patrick Christie's Monday to Friday, 3 till 6. We tackle the day's news agenda like you've never seen before. It's high tempo, high octane, the most controversial topics and the best guests. You will not be able to take your eyes and ears off it. I'm not afraid to ask the questions that you really want answered. 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my 2 comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
GB News has its own late-night paper preview show, Headliners, where comedians take you through the next day's top news stories. You don't have to bother reading the newspaper, we've got it covered for you. Headliners, every night at 11 p.m, and repeated every morning at 5 a.m. We won't send you to sleep like some of the other paper review shows out there. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, on Sunday mornings from 9:30, taking the politicians to task and breaking out of SW1 to see how their decisions are affecting you across the UK. Bursting the Westminster bubble every Sunday morning, only on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain's watching.
Every Sunday from 11, join Michael Portillo.
There will be topical discussion, looking at the week before and the week to come. So kick back and relax at 11 a.m. on Sundays on GB News with me, Michael Portillo. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
What you get for breakfast is something that, if we do our jobs right, you will wake up to news that you didn't know the night before.
It's a conversation. It's not just me and Eamon.
We want to get to know you, and we want you to get to know us.
From 6, it's Breakfast with Eamon and Isabel.
Monday to Thursdays on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Hi, I'm Dan Wootton. You can watch me live on GB News Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. And did you know that you can also watch and listen live on our website, gbnews.com. You'll always be up to date on the latest breaking news, as well as enjoying the best stories, opinions and shows. You can even join the debate under our live player as you're watching. So head straight to gbnews.com on TV, radio and online. GB News, Britain's news channel.
Good morning to you. It's 8 o'clock on Sunday, the 25th of June. Today, it's been 24 hours of mayhem. Wagner fighters are starting to withdraw, but how will the failed Russian insurrection affect the war in Ukraine?
And it's been a disastrous week for the government after terrible news for the economy and a dive in the polls. Can Rishi Sunak recover?
Frankie Dettori bids farewell to Royal Ascot after a 33 love affair with racing's most famous track. We'll get the latest from Aidan McGee very shortly.
And do you think about how your pets are coping with this very hot summer weather? We've got some great tips for you later. Oh, that one's watching us.
Oh, very nice. And if you're wondering what the weather's going to be like for you today, have a look.
A hot and humid Sunday for some of us, the chance of thunderstorms for others. Join me later on for the full GB News weather forecast.
I'm Stephen Dixon.
And I'm Anne Diamond, and this is Breakfast on GB News.
We've been asking if your job means you get pestered by people to help them out or do stuff on the cheap, you know, mates rates, all that sort of thing. And loads of you getting pestered. But Ian says, I work as a funeral director and I'm never asked for mates rates.
Wonder why, yeah.
Yeah, probably not the
it's
time
not the sort of thing, is it? No. Sandra in Sheffield makes an interesting point. She said, I worked in M&S. Indeed, every few months we would move stock around so that customers would have to walk more to find what they want. The idea was, walking around the store, you would see new items and purchase them.
Oh, that's
Is that why
cheeky.
they do it?
There you go. It's so frustrating when you think you know where you're going and then it all goes to pot.
It's all different.
Robert says, I'm a welder. You wouldn't believe the amount of rust buckets that your friends want fixing.
Yeah, I'll bet. Lisa says we run our own removal company and we're always asked for cheap or free removals or storage. It's your business, though, isn't it? If you did it cheap for everybody who asked, you wouldn't have a business anymore.
Oh, this is a bit grim. Greg says, I'm a butcher and I've been asked by farmer friends to process some sheep, seeing as you're here. Oh.
That's not fair. That's not fair either, is it?
No.
Not really fair to ask for mates' rates.
No, it's not.
Especially at the moment, everybody's got to try and do their best.
This is it, because this has happened to me quite a lot. I mean, not in the same line of things, but Wendy in Maidstone says, I was a US immigration paralegal for 20-odd years. So-called friends would only contacted me if they needed advice about getting a visa or green card. Since I no longer do that job, needless to say, I don't hear from those friends anymore.
They're not real friends then, really.
I've got some people who only ever get in touch when they want something.
That's not right.
It's not right.
It's not being a friend.
No, it's not, no. I've stopped replying to them now.
You know, you were talking about the fact that you've got loyalty cards for these supermarkets, which I've never been interested in because I thought that it was just a way of mining data, finding out what your shopping instincts are and everything.
Which it is.
But I didn't realise that it gave you money off. I mean,
yes.
Shelley agrees with you that the supermarket loyalty card prices are brilliant, Stephen. I bought a bottle of gin yesterday. Full price £28, nectar card price £20.
Yeah.
But it makes you think, doesn't it? If the stores can afford to do a cheaper product for you because you've got a loyalty card, then isn't that the real price we should all be paying?
Well, possibly. But there is an argument to say, do they run it as a loss leader just to keep you in to the supermarket?
Well, Tony disagrees. He said if supermarkets can give you so much money off just for having their card, it goes to show that the food is overpriced in the first place.
Yeah, maybe so. But you get that with everything, don't you? It's like if you have a blue light discount or an army discount or things like that, and you get 10 or 15% off a student discount.
Yeah.
Well, that's 10 or 15% of pure profit, isn't it?
Yes, it probably is.
So, you know, so it's just, I mean, they have got to make money, but it's when they can knock £8 off a bottle of gin. I bought some of that sugar stuff, you know, fake sugar.
Fake sugar?
Yeah, Truvia or whatever it's called.
Oh, I see what you mean, yeah.
Yeah, and that was, it was £5.50, you know, with the card it was £3.
No, that's a lot off, isn't it?
It's a lot.
Taylor's watching us from New Zealand. Hi there, Taylor. I'm watching you from New Zealand, and on Tuesdays, our supermarket offers 5% discount on all groceries purchased by pensioners.
Well, there you go. Tuesday's the day it goes shopping then.
It's a long way to go to New Zealand to achieve that.
And I'm not a pensioner.
No.
Yet.
But I am.
Yeah, you are. You can save a fortune.
Yeah, not if I have to go to New Zealand for it.
I don't know when I become a pensioner now.
No, believe me, it changes.
Is that...
I'm one of that generation, what do they call them, where they changed for women.
WASPy?
Yeah, that's right. I lost out hugely.
Really?
I lost about 5 years of a pension that I should have had I been born just a little bit later.
Right. Isn't it funny, all this sort of thing? No, you only become a pensioner when you're eligible for state pension.
That's
right.
How it works. Yeah, that's what it was.
So for me, it's probably about 77.
We used to call them old age pensioners, didn't we?
Yeah.
Wouldn't dare do that to me.
No, I wouldn't dare. Wouldn't dare. What looked like a mutiny in Russia yesterday appears to have been called off overnight. The mercenary Russian fighting force, the Wagner Group, led by Yevgeny Prigozhin, had already taken over the southern city of Rostov-on-Don and were apparently marching towards Moscow.
Now, Putin was said to have fled the Kremlin, and it looked as though there could almost be a civil war. But last night, a deal seemed to have been done.
Well, earlier we spoke to defence editor at the Evening Standard, Robert Fox.
It's the tale of two real chances, and they've been in it together since Putin rose to power. This is the history lecture. A lot of deep history in the papers. No, you want shallow history. It's when they knew that they could grab all kinds of goodies when they were around the mayoralty of Petersburg at the beginning of this century. And Prigozhin and Putin have been buddies. Prigozhin, who'd done jail time, was the caterer. Yeah. And that's how he made his initial fortune with the Concord Catering Company.
Yeah, because there are lots of photographs of him...
serving. He was always known as Putin's chef. Then he started cooking cyber because he got into hacking through a thing called the IRA, the Internet Research Agency, very much involved in whatever was going on, and not in 2016. But it was a big trial run of really disrupting Western elections at that time. I say no more about that. And he's sort of been around with a bunch of gangsters, but became more and more essential to what Russia was doing in Syria and in Libya, and then started stuffing its pockets, which is where Wagner is now, in West Africa, with Mali and around there. This is important because a lot of money is being talked about. They don't need that much money because they've gone in as guards and security in an unstable situation. Gold mines, mineral resources and so on, and way down. And that's how it works. And what Prigozhin's team will be saying to him, and the gang will be saying, you've got to keep us going as a corporation. Back to what was going on yesterday and before, is I think a lot of these people who were in very serious jail terms for murder and worse, some of them, they wanted to get out of the fighting where they'd had a terrible time in Bakhmut. We are not up for the meat grinder anymore, and we don't want to go back to jail. That's what they were saying. Oh. If you saw them hanging around the images of Rostov-on-Don, very good place to go because it's where you run the logistics into Ukraine. They didn't look as if they were cooing anything because there were people chatting to them, there were people taking selfies with them. I mean, if you're doing a military takeover, wouldn't you build up checkpoints? Wouldn't you have sandbags outside the vital communications centre? And this thing of going on the road, yes, it was probably a string of about a couple of dozen vehicles, but it wasn't a takeover. And even with 25,000, if they had them, they couldn't have taken over Moscow.
No, but I mean, there is this talk of, I don't know whether we believe it or not, of Putin going into hiding and all the rest of it. Could this, even though this has ended, could it be destabilising?
Putin looked very shaky on the telly yesterday morning, unusually so. Point two, state broadcasting, for once, did not know what to say. Was there going to be a deal? Was Prigozhin going to try and take over in the Kremlin? It was all up in the air. Because I'm saying this is the odd couple. It's the story of these two going together. And I guess Putin himself, if he was half aware, knew that Prigozhin was going to do something. But he didn't know what. And by the way, from the beginning of the week, I think the Western intelligence agencies, certainly US and UK, I was getting very odd noises from various places. They thought something was up.
Well, something was up. We just don't know what. Joining us now is Senior Consulting Fellow at Chatham House, Keir Giles. Good morning to you. What do you think happened in the last 24 hours?
Well, you mentioned just now we still don't know, and there's a lot we will still not know sometime after all of the dust has settled. We can see broadly what the course of events was and who was where, but the details of this deal that appears to have been struck between the Kremlin and Prigozhin and his Wagner group are still trickling out, and a lot of them just make no sense at all. It wasn't in either side's interest to arrive at the deal that we've been presented with and told that this is a resolution to the conflict. Prigozhin going into exile in Belarus, under what terms we don't know, because he must be now a marked man for having stood against the Kremlin. And Putin himself weakened by this, because it shows that you can have an armed gang roaming around southern Russia putting demands to the authorities, and then you get away with it. Yesterday morning, Putin was talking about this as treason, which must be stamped out. Yesterday evening, it seems, well, actually, no, it's all fine. You can all go home again. So there are a lot of unanswered questions about exactly what happened here and also what it means for the future for Russia.
What do we make of, I mean, the papers are full of speculation as to whether Putin will go, who could be the next president, all that sort of thing. Is that jumping the gun?
It is a little. Now, it's true that in the long term, of course, this puts Putin in a very shaky position because there's been this challenge to his leadership. There's been this challenge, this solid grip on power that everybody thought he had and that he likes to portray himself as having. And, of course, it sets a precedent. If Prigozhin can do this, then others can as well. So there's no doubt that it's made things a lot more unstable in Russia. But throughout all of this, there was never a direct challenge to Putin's leadership. Prigozhin's argument was with the Ministry of Defense. He wasn't challenging the fact that Russia is waging war on Ukraine. He just wanted people to do it differently and better. He wanted people to do it his way. So there wasn't a direct confrontation between those two individuals. It was just the implications of what Prigozhin did that are really threatening for Putin.
And everything that's happened in and around Moscow and that other place, the southern city, everything that's happened, yes, it's destabilising in Russia, and it must be very upsetting for Russians wanting to know what's going on. But is it good news for Ukraine?
You would have thought so. And certainly there must have been opportunities for Ukraine to do something during this temporary destabilization and confusion within Russia. But it was all over incredibly swiftly. Now, I wouldn't be surprised if Ukraine, who have proved themselves very adept at information operations, were doing a little to stoke the confusion and to exploit the opportunities. But the Prigozhin move and Wagner's move didn't actually disrupt Russian military operations against Ukraine, because that's not what they disapprove of. You heard from Robert Fox just now how they were taking over the headquarters of that operation down in Rostov-na-Donu. If you see the pictures of them going in, it was a very chummy affair. They stopped for coffee on the way and were walking in with coffee in their hands. It wasn't any kind of confrontation, because they all agree that they want to destroy Ukraine, so that's not going to change. It means that whatever the outcome of this, the threat to Ukraine and to the rest of us and to Europe is not going to go away.
But if there's 25,000 or so Wagner troops, and if they're saying they don't want to be in Ukraine anymore, doesn't that significantly weaken what the Russian army can do?
Well, first of all, we have to be really careful about the numbers. 25,000 is the figure that's being used. It's a figure that comes from Prigozhin, and that's notoriously unreliable. But you're right that there's a big question over what happens now with these people. Now, under the terms of this deal, if we're to believe what we're told, some might be absorbed into the Russian Ministry of Defense. Some might be amnestied, but you've still got a large body of relatively well-trained, heavily armed, and probably very upset people at the moment moving around southern Russia. Nobody quite knows where they are. So that is an ongoing situation which we'll see pan out over the next few days as people decide where their loyalties lie.
And these troops that we're talking about, there's no doubt, is there, that they are guilty of real appalling war crimes from what they did inside Ukraine?
Not just Ukraine, but they have a long history of the most horrific atrocities wherever they go. Whether it's Syria, whether it's Africa, all of the different places that Robert Fox was listing just a few minutes ago for you, they've left a trail of absolute misery and destruction between them. And some of the most appalling murders, which they don't try to conceal, they actually revel in it. And within Russia itself, this is an organization that's been given a free pass. It's been given an exemption for whatever passes for rule of law in Russia. The Kremlin gives a nod and a wink when they carry out extrajudicial murders using sledgehammers. So, yes, this is a deeply unpleasant, murderous gang of psychopaths, and we wouldn't have wanted them anywhere near power in Russia anyway.
Why is the international community so concerned? Because there was this sense, at least for a stage yesterday, where people were saying, well, perhaps something's going to happen, Putin could fall. And you say he's still destabilised by this, but Western powers seem to enter full panic mode at this. I mean, why are they seeing this as a negative thing rather than a positive thing?
I have to say, watching this unfold over the last 48 hours, we didn't really get a sense of panic from the West. Now, everybody was watching closely because you want to know how this is going to pan out. But I don't think there was a sense that was going to be an imminent change of leadership in the Kremlin or anything as dramatic as that. Now, the noises you hear from the US, as always, is wanting to make sure who's actually in charge of Russia's nuclear weapons. But there, too, there didn't seem to be any threat of anything immediately destabilizing. It's different for Russia's neighbors, of course. You had countries like Latvia saying, well, we're a little concerned about what's going to happen. We're going to close the border to Russians now because there isn't a threat at the moment, but we don't want one to develop. But that's very different from panic. All of the panic seems to have been in Moscow, where they were digging trenches outside the city and putting armoured vehicles outside government buildings.
Yes, quite a sight, wasn't it? We'll leave it there. Thank you very much indeed for helping us understand what on earth is going on. Keir Giles, thank you.
Thank you.
It was a terrible sight seeing those tanks in Red Square and everything again. You think, oh, what have we come to again?
I tell you what, he's an interesting man, though, isn't he? He knows his... I really like it when you have an expert who knows his onions, but delivers in a very calm way.
Yeah. And in a way that you can understand, because I think we're all scratching our heads on this one, aren't we?
It's so... I mean, it's so utterly confusing. Geopolitics. Heck, it's almost... But doesn't it almost feel a bit like the Cold War all over again? That sort of whole sense of, you know, all this stuff going on in Moscow, we need to try and understand it.
And what I find interesting is so many of the experts that we've spoken to just this morning have said that what they've learned when they've studied Russia for a long time is that you mustn't always judge what you think is going on in your Western mindset, because Russians are very different, and they think differently and they act differently. Do you remember that extraordinary former
Oh, Valeri...
Valeri,
I can't remember
who was
his
so fascinating. He kept saying that, didn't he? He said, you've got to stop thinking with a Western mind on this, that this is not how Putin is thinking, because he's Russian and Russians think differently.
It's fascinating.
It's because of the history, I suppose.
But also frightening, if you can't understand
But that's
quite
why
how
it's so
working.
important to have experts like Keir Giles there and Robert Fox who have understood that and have a different perspective on it.
Yeah, if you've got any thoughts on that, gbviews@gbnews.com. We perhaps need to try and understand the mindset of what's going on in Downing Street at the minute, because it's been a very tough week for the Conservative Party, partly down to interest rates decision. You know, that's gone up to 5% now, highest since 2008, and of course, the knock-on effect that has on mortgages.
Yeah, and there's a knock-on effect, of course, on how the government is even trying to survive, because the latest YouGov poll shows that support for the Tories has fallen to 22%. And that's a figure not seen since February. And it's only actually 3 points higher than the most disastrous time, just after Liz Truss's mini-budget.
OK, let's talk to our political reporter, Catherine Forster, who can shed some light on all of this. Morning to you, Catherine. You do wonder whether the government is finding itself in a hole that it is not going to be able to dig its way out of.
Yes, you do, because, of course, Rishi Sunak made halving inflation one of his 5 priorities. Now, as we heard this week, inflation is currently at 8.7%. The chances of it being down at 5% or under at the end of the year look very slim indeed. And of course, the knock-on effect of that was then that the Bank of England put the interest rate up to 5%, which is going to be massively expensive for people with mortgages up and down the country. So bad news for number 10, bad news for households. But of course, inflation that the government has said they're going to get down, that's not really their job. That is the job of the Bank of England. Now, the Bank of England's been coming in for a lot of criticism, but in taking ownership of inflation, as Rishi Sunak has done, that means that they thought they'd get the credit for getting it down. They thought it would be coming down quicker and faster than it has done, but also means they are likely to get the blame now. And of course, Labour sitting on the sidelines, basically saying to people, do you feel better off than you did when the Conservatives came to power? And pretty sure that the answer for most people is going to be no. So as you say, the poll ratings, Rishi Sunak had improved the Conservatives' poll ratings, had been doing better up until about March, the Windsor framework, etc., the deal with the protocol. But things have gone really quite wrong in the last week or two, and now they are desperate to get back on the front foot, because they really are going to need to show some results, and sooner rather than later.
And of course, you're speaking from Uxbridge, which is Boris Johnson's, or was Boris Johnson's, constituency, and that is going to be all eyes on that when it's decided that there will be a by-election there. That's going to really tell us a lot about Tory popularity, isn't it?
Yes, Rishi Sunak had hoped to avoid by-elections, partly with the resignation honours list that backfired rather spectacularly, but is now facing 4, this being one of them. Of course, Boris Johnson resigned very suddenly. He had a majority of 7,000, but Labour are confident of taking this seat, and we will find out on July 20th, both this and 2 other by-elections. Can the Conservatives hold on to any of these seats?
Yeah, it's going to be an interesting one to watch. Catherine, for now, thanks very much indeed.
Anthony in Yorkshire has emailed in, says, the Conservatives just infuriate me now. Sunak hopes things are going to get better, but the Border Force says he's failed 10,000 times already this year to stop the boats. Plus, I have no idea what actual figure he wants to get inflation and borrowing down to.
Well, yeah,
just wants to see a trend going down.
Trend going down. Well, it's sort of 5% for inflation, isn't it? It's a sort of vague target. Borrowing, I don't know. Stephen Cleethorpe says, as a homeowner and Conservative Party member, I agree with Christine Hamilton, who was on earlier on. The party is holed below the waterline.
Yeah, and Pamela says, I agree. Christine is right. The Tories are finished.
Andy says, the Tory party might be in chaos, but a Labour government would be a disaster.
I think, yeah, that's the trouble, is that if you don't vote for the government, you stand the very real chance of either a Labour government or some sort of mishmash. Because I don't believe, do you, that Labour are doing well enough at the moment to get an overall majority? Do you?
Yeah.
And so we could end up with a worse mess of a load of people who won't agree on what to do.
No, maybe, but the coalition government in 2010, which although in some respects was not very popular, did actually get on with you agree with the direction they took is another matter, but they did actually get on with, there wasn't that much sort of infighting between the Tories and the Lib Dems.
No. I think a lot of people actually liked that coalition government.
Yeah, unless you're a Lib Dem.
Well, the Lib Dems were very disappointed ultimately, but they were not the poor relation, but they were the smaller coalition partner, weren't they? And so they weren't ever going to get all of their policies right through.
No.
Maybe they were promised they would get some that they didn't.
But I've got to say, I'm not a huge fan of coalitions as a general rule.
We're not used to them, are we?
We're not used to them. And you look
there are lots of other countries that have them all the time.
Yeah, but you look at countries like Italy, and there's just this constant instability, isn't there?
Well, what have we got?
Yeah, OK. Fair point, well made, Anne Diamond.
By the way, are you having a barbecue this afternoon?
Oh.
Because the weather's there for it, you know, it's a Sunday afternoon, it's wonderful, I do love a barbecue in the garden. 30% of barbecues end in a row.
Over what?
Oh, everything. Well, it's a mixture of having a lot to drink, hot weather, but people always, don't they, have an argument about whether the sausage is cooked well enough, or you know, or what sort of meat to put on a barbie, or whether you should start the meat off in the oven and then bring it out to the barbie later. Yeah, Generation Z. The 18 to 24s are the most likely. I tell you, it's also rows between men and women because the men think they know what they're doing with the barbecue.
Well, of course they do. Women just want to... Who are we talking to
Women
the other
do the
day?
salad, don't they?
Do the salad. Who wants salad at a barbecue?
Well, when you're eating your meat, you want a bit of salad with it, don't you?
No, and all these piles of potato salad and all this sort of stuff comes out.
Love a potato salad.
Oh,
what then do you... If you were cooking meat, what do you serve it with?
A bun. A bit of ketchup.
So you just do stuff that you can bung in a bun?
Yeah.
Well, not even with a bit of lettuce in it?
Well, no, it's a bit of a faff.
See,
really.
we're having a row already, and that's the sort of row. That's what happens in fact. 30% of family barbecues end in a row. Just watch out. I'm just warning you, that's all.
See, we're not having a row, we're just having words.
Yeah. Yes.
We're having words.
We're having words.
We're like an old married couple.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. If you've had a row with a barbecue in your home and you totally understand, or maybe you think differently, maybe, you know, men are great barbecue cooks. And maybe salad is really important with a barbecue. Yeah, please get in touch. GBviews@gbnews.com.
And if you're cooking veggie stuff, because, well, we're both veggies, aren't we? If you're cooking veggie stuff on a barbecue, cook it from frozen. Then it gets nice and crispy on the outside and still moist on the inside, doesn't dry out.
What sort of... You mean like a veggie banger or a veggie burger?
Yeah, cook them from frozen.
Cook it from frozen?
Yeah, it's much, much nicer. Yeah, much nicer. And, of course, you don't have to cook it through like meat in the same way.
Yeah, that's right.
So, but that's the way to do it, yeah. Very nice, too. Anyway, we'll take you through the sport very shortly. Aidan McGee's heading our way. This is Breakfast on GB News.
Like all families, we have arguments every now and then, but actually we agree on what the mission of GB News is, and that's the most fundamentally important thing.
GB News provides the kind of platform that lets all voices be heard.
We don't hold back. We're free to say what we really think. Just because some people who live in a tiny little Westminster bubble think that their particular story is important, that's not the most important story for me.
And often they will be difficult stories, stories that you won't find on the establishment media.
Because what people think in the north of England may be very different to what they're thinking in the home counties.
We're going to carry on telling the world what life is really like for households up and down the UK.
We love to be in your car, in your kitchen as you're having your breakfast. Whatever you're doing, you are part of the show. If it matters to you, it matters to us.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News, the People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Monday to Thursday, 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. Join me, Dan Wootton. I'll bring you the sharpest takes and hottest debates.
Do you not believe in prisons? I don't believe in prisons.
I'm completely stunned. I guarantee you there'll be no spin, no bias, no censorship.
I actually was personally quite offended by it.
And no reason to go to bed.
So I guess they've always been quite woke.
That's Dan Wootton tonight on TV, radio and online. Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Nightmare commute. Kick it up a gear with me, Patrick Christys, at drive time, 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News Radio. You can listen online and on DAB+, on the smart speaker app and on the GB News app. And if you've got an Alexa, all you have to say is, Alexa, play GB News. We're also on TuneIn and the Radio Player apps. From the school run to rush hour, get revved up with me, Patrick Christys, on GB News and GB News Radio.
So Jubes and Kerr, we tackle the issues of the day with real, robust debate, both sides of the fence, battling it out with me in the middle with my forthright opinions and views. And often really interesting things happen because you start with a position and then by the end of the debate you find actually, well, I might not have thought about that one.
What we need in this country is 2 new political parties.
You should maybe think about doing a 2024 calendar. I'm Michelle Dewberry and I'm keeping you company right through until 7 o'clock this evening.
GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's watching.
Westminster is going around in ever-decreasing circles, followed by the media. Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it? Join me at 7 p.m, Mondays to Thursdays on Farage, here on GB News. We will have open, rational debate. We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this. Join us here on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain is watching.
You've probably seen politicians interviewed 1,000 times, but we do it differently. We find out who they really are, we don't shout, we chat, and hopefully we bring a bit of light, not just heat. Did you know Kate Moss?
Apparently.
Do you have a pair of jeans or a pair of jeans?
No, of course I don't. What would I do with them?
My friends are like, oh my God, what's she doing now? Join me every Sunday at 6 for Gloria Meets, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
8:29 morning to you. This is Breakfast with Stephen and Anne.
Can I tell you a lovely GB views?
Oh, go on.
We were talking earlier about would today's children know how to use a dial phone, a rotary dial phone, and you know the fact that what do I mean? Things move on,
yes,
and you lose the. Trish, anyway, says, before vinyl became popular again, one of my sons asked to borrow one of my albums, Tubular Bells. He returned it to me saying it didn't have the track on that he wanted to hear. I asked him if he'd turned it over and played the other side. Problem solved. Yeah, I like that.
There you go. So you just assume people know.
Yeah.
There you go. Great stuff. Ada McGee's here with all the sport. Look at Frankie Dettori.
Yeah, absolutely.
He's been around forever.
He's been around forever.
I think he rode his first winner in about 1996, but I might be wrong on that because I seem to remember him being around even earlier than that. But look, they've if you look after yourself, it's like any sport. You can achieve real longevity in a sport. But yeah, yesterday was supposedly, I say supposedly because this is farewell at Royal Ascot where he's dominated over the years, and the big question is, is he really going to say goodbye? I've seen so many people in sport regret retirement, actually, Stephen, because you're a long time out of the sport. AP McCoy was on the radio earlier this week saying that you're a long time retired, and that's somebody who's retired relatively recently. And I sometimes think, when it's just dominated your life, and not just the sport, but the winning as well. He's been so successful, and I wonder. He didn't look as if at the end of it in his interviews yesterday as if he was somebody who was ready to give it another go. He said, "I'm actually too tired to cry." To get emotional,
yeah.
And he said when he went into the weigh-in yesterday before the race, he felt 16 again. So that says to me that there is a little bit of appetite there. But it's been an exhausting week. He finished 7th in the race. The race itself was quite interesting. An 80-1 outsider won the race. Cardem, ridden by Jamie Spencer, that was the joint longest odds in a field of 16 or whatever it is.
Wow.
That was so you don't see that in a calibre race like this. You don't see that very often because the horses are so finely tuned now. You don't get those kind of outliers winning the races again. But in terms of whether we're going to see him again, I hope we do. The 81 races now. He's still a little bit short of Lester Piggott, who set the race at Ascot at 116.
Wow.
Oh, that's a...
But it's different
Lester
because he
Piggott,
may have...
He was the Queen Mother's favourite,
Yes, he
wasn't he?
Yeah.
He was, yeah, what a character. But I think there were more races then, so I don't know whether it's like...
Yes, I mean, I just Googled him, and his first win in Britain was at Goodwood in 1987. But, of course, he was already winning in Italy before then.
Yeah, he was. I mean, he was... I mean,
So
my dad... He was a big hero of my dad.
His career spans 35 years.
Yeah. Oh, right. Oh, sorry, yeah. Sorry, I thought it was Lester Piggott for a second.
Oh, no.
I was going to say his first win was before 87. So, will we see him again? I don't know. Sometimes he's got 150 million pounds in the bank, so he's got not. He hasn't got.
That's what he wants to do now.
It does, yeah, exactly.
50 million quid.
Yeah, but he's been racing for, as Anne said, his first winner was in 87. You know, and it's a rich sport.
Money in racing was that much?
Yeah, no, well, I mean,
I knew the trainers and the breeders make a lot of money through.
Well, that would be endorsements as well. I mean, he's been very marketable down the years, hasn't he? He's very charismatic in front of.
Did he still jump off
camera.
the horse at the end?
Yeah, he does.
Yes, he did the other day.
Yeah.
That seems to be a tradition.
So he's had a great week. You know, it was a little bit disappointing yesterday. Finished 7th. Given somebody like him will look at it and think, well, how's an 80-1 shot won this race? It probably should have been him, but goodness me, he's done so much in the sport. Four winners earlier in the week, including a 9th Gold Cup. I think he can leave this race pretty contented.
Yeah.
Obviously a great favourite of the Royals as well.
Absolutely, yeah, hugely.
What's happening in football with the transfer window?
Well, Mason Mount was an interesting one. Man United lodged a final bid, £58 million plus 7 in add-ons. Add-ons means, once he makes a certain number of appearances, that triggers another payment. Maybe a certain number of England caps might trigger another payment. Future success, that kind of stuff. Now, the issue with United is that their takeover, we don't really know when it's going to happen. So they're kind of spending money, which might not be. Is it the current owners who've got to fork out for this transfer, or is it going to be the next ones? So they want a staggered bid because if you want if you have add-ons, then it falls into the remit of the new owners. But anyway, they've made 3 bids. He's 24 years old, best mates with Declan Rice, as we know from their junior days at Chelsea. I think United are going to walk away from this now. You don't want a situation where they had with Frankie de Jong last summer, where they just didn't know whether the player wanted to come. And sooner or later, from a commercial point of view, if you just keep going back and making bids, then we're relatively early in the summer. Chelsea will just sit there and think, well, no, just wait until it goes up and up. He's got a year left on his contract. A lot of people are saying to me, look, why he's 24 years old. Why don't you wait till next summer? They can get him for free. But football people don't think like that, because when you're a manager and you're a manager at a club like Manchester United, and you're only 6 games away from the sack. And so you're not thinking...
Is that what they reckon?
Several managers have said that down the years. Yeah, it's not the case in every... But you lose 6 games in a row, generally speaking, you're up against it no matter who you are, except if you're an Alex Ferguson or a Arsene Wenger or somebody like that who's kind of got all the credit in the bank. But you're not thinking that far ahead. And so that just shows how competitive and the stakes in football now. You will pay, upwards of £60 million for a player you can get for free next summer, because you're not thinking about this time next year.
No, you need
it's all about the now.
Don't you?
It's all about the now, and maybe that's the short-termism in football that's kind of, some would say, was ruining the game. We're dispensing with managers now. Sometimes they're doing 2 bad jobs in a row, and that's them on the scrap heap at the age of late 30s. That underlines the kind of the short-term nature of the game. But then we've got Declan Rice as well. That's still bubbling under. I think Manchester City want assurances that he definitely wants to go there.
For 100 million quid, you'd want to know that he definitely
wants to go there. The money's good wherever he goes. He's already earned a few quid at West Ham. Don't forget. But I mean, Manchester City they're in for players a lot of the time. Most of the time they win because of their cash and because of their prestige in the game now. Obviously, they've won trophies, won the treble, which we talked about 2 weeks ago. But his preference, I think, is to stay in London. I think he would go in as captain at Arsenal as well. He's got the world at his feet right now. He's just won a European trophy with West Ham. West Ham's first trophy since proper trophy since about 1980. So there's that. That's going to rumble on. I think we'll see some movement on that within a week or so, because I think the clubs want to go on, sort out their pre-season tours. They want to sort out commercial activities around it. And if you can get Declan Rice, it's a huge coup, no matter who you are, because he's an outstanding player right now.
Meanwhile, at the Queen's Club, the tennis is going to get interesting, isn't it?
Yeah.
Because Carlos Alcaraz, if he wins, and he's very likely to...
Yeah, I would have thought so, against Alex de Minaur,
that lifts him above Novak Djokovic in the rankings.
That's right. I mean, Look, we're going into Wimbledon. I think Wimbledon starts on, when is it? It must be within 2 weeks from now, I would have thought. So it's a good warm-up. There aren't that many warm-up grass court tournaments anymore. Federer always used to go to Halle in Germany, didn't he? Queen's is one of the prestigious ones. So it's a good ATP event to get under your belt, even if you don't even compete in Wimbledon. I mean, obviously you wouldn't do that. It's a warm-up event. However, I think it might just be, we're not far off it being Alcaraz's time. He's 20 years old. He won the US Open last September. What was interesting, though, we discussed it on here about 2 or 3 weeks ago, when he was in the semi-final against Djokovic, he lost by 3-1. He was carrying a bit of an injury, but he actually said that the pressure of facing an absolutely gargantuan opponent like Djokovic actually made him freeze a little bit.
And you could even get that happening at Wimbledon, because if he goes in as top seed, because apparently that's what would happen.
Yeah.
Then obviously number 2 seed must be Djokovic. Yeah. I presume. I don't know.
Yeah, I'm not 100% sure.
A lot is affected by Djokovic's vaccination.
Also, yeah, it is absolutely. But also, facing Djokovic at Wimbledon is an even tougher proposition than facing him at the French. But nonetheless, you're looking at arguably, possibly now the greatest player who's ever played, and it just shows that even an upcoming player who's already got a Grand Slam under his belt, like Alcaraz, will feel a bit timid up against Djokovic. But he has to overcome that. That's the psychology of sport. Wimbledon's still the most prestigious Grand Slam of the 4, I would suggest, and it'd be fantastic for him to do that. He reached the 4th round last year. I've been following his career for a good year or so, and we've been waiting for so long. We've been talking about Djokovic, Federer and Nadal, even Murray, 10, 12 years ago, we're thinking, who are going to be the heir apparents, who's going to come forward? And nobody has really come forward in that group. There have been a few pretenders around who won the odd slam here and there. Can somebody come along and actually dominate and win multiple slams? Alcaraz might just be the man, but if he's frightened of facing Djokovic right now,
he's going to have to
he's got to overcome that. But we'll see what happens, and today will be a good litmus test as well. He's up against Alex de Minaur, who disposed of Andy Murray in this tournament.
Oh, that's right, yeah.
Aidan, good to see you.
See you in a little while.
Very much indeed. Coming up for you, we're going to be looking at Tesco's. They're scrapping some bog-off deals. Is that the thing to do in the cost of living crisis? We'll tell you more very shortly.
First and foremost, I am a GB News fan, and I was before I was working here. Just love the fact that we're asking the questions that a lot of establishment media won't ask.
With a bit of a twist, we not only want to inform you, but we want to keep you entertained.
It's worth the drive because you get in and the team's all ready and waiting, they're itching to go, and it's a proper little family.
GB News is the people's channel.
It's the audience that makes the programme sing.
We're giving our viewers and our listeners a voice. I see the thousands of your letters, tweets, emails, you name it, coming in.
Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it?
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent you.
It's time for something different. It's time for GB News. I'm very patriotic. I believe in Britain. Our best days lie ahead.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Join us here on GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Join me, Patrick Christie's, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6. We tackle the day's news agenda like you've never seen before. It's high tempo, high octane, the most controversial topics and the best guests. You will not be able to take your eyes and ears off it. I'm not afraid to ask the questions that you really want answered. 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my 2 comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
GB News has its own late-night paper preview show, Headliners, where comedians take you through the next day's top news stories. You don't have to bother reading the newspaper, we've got it covered for you. Headliners, every night at 11 p.m, and repeated every morning at 5 a.m. We won't send you to sleep like some of the other paper review shows out there. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, on Sunday mornings from 9:30, taking the politicians to task and breaking out of SW1 to see how their decisions are affecting you across the UK. Bursting the Westminster bubble every Sunday morning, only on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain's watching.
Every Sunday from 11, join Michael Portillo.
There will be topical discussion, looking at the week before
and the week to come. So kick back and relax at 11 a.m. on Sundays on GB News with me, Michael Portillo. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
What you get for breakfast is something that, if we do our jobs right, you will wake up to news that you didn't know the night before.
It's a conversation. It's not just me and Eamon.
We want to get to know you, and we want you to get to know us.
From 6, it's Breakfast with Eamon and Isabel.
Monday to Thursdays on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Hi, I'm Dan Wootton. You can watch me live on GB News Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. And did you know that you can also watch and listen live on our website, gbnews.com. You'll always be up to date on the latest breaking news, as well as enjoying the best stories, opinions and shows. You can even join the debate under our live player as you're watching. So head straight to gbnews.com on TV, radio and online. GB News, Britain's news channel.
It's 8:42. Let's have a look at the newspapers this morning with Claire Pearsall and Lewis Oakley. Good morning, you two.
Morning.
Let's have a look, Claire, at the Mail on Sunday, should we? And village halls.
Yes. Now, this is one of those sort of unintended consequences of government legislation. The terrorism bill, in its current format, would make the trustees of village halls be responsible for training and evacuation plans for bomb scares in every single village hall. Now, the Terrorism bill is obviously very important, given the Manchester Arena bombings, which were an appalling atrocity. But it's now putting the same level of responsibility on volunteers who run village halls to make sure that every single community group or person that hires it is trained in all of these anti-terror laws. Now, it seems a little overkill. As I say, these are volunteers. 10,000 volunteers run our village halls up and down the country and do a sterling job. They really, really do. And I only have to look at my own little village hall, New Ash Green Village Hall, beautiful, in the middle of nowhere. Don't think the Pilates group for the over 60s on a Wednesday morning or the parent and toddler group on a Tuesday afternoon are really going to be terror hotspots.
No, and actually, evacuation procedures in most village halls, that would there's a
One door.
Exactly. Exactly. It's the way in, it's the way out.
It depends on, I suppose, whether it's just one of those things that maybe if you could just give somebody a leaflet and say, you have to read that, by the way.
Yeah.
I mean, that's simple enough. But if you have to actually go through training for every person who's going to use a village hall...
That's right. And my concern is that you'll lose volunteers to run those village
will.
halls. And village halls are set up for the good of the community. So if you lose the volunteers, then you're in trouble. Do you have to pay somebody to do it? Do they have to pay for the training, which is going to increase the higher costs for those groups that use it? And if you're looking
the whole
at
point is they're cheap.
groups, absolutely. And they are a hub, and we have a really good hub on a Friday for a loneliness hub, where people can just get together, they can pop in, pop out, have something to eat or drink if they wish. You start making that unaffordable, then you're creating more problems than you're solving. But this is the problem with legislation. It is a very blunt tool, and these are hopefully the Home Affairs Select Committee are now fully aware of it. Let's hope that
they inject a bit of common sense.
Absolutely.
I think it's tricky though, right? Because if something were to, God forbid, happen in London, you'd have snipers there in seconds. If it is a village hall out in the middle of nowhere, maybe, you do need to have people that know what they're doing in that situation. I know it's unlikely.
Why would anyone attack a village hall in the middle of nowhere?
Because of that, because no one would suspect it. Everywhere in the cities is very high alert. We know about it. A village hall somewhere, they're going to be less protected. It's going to take a longer response time, unfortunately.
I think they're in most of them, especially in the countryside, are in the middle of nowhere. Parking is a little bit tricky. I wouldn't hope that. I don't see the point. If it's a terror attack, it is there to send a message or to create.
But as Stephen said, I mean, village halls are generally one room. Occasionally, if you're lucky, they've got a kitchen as well with a big door.
Yes,
and that's it.
And that's right, but and the majority of people that know them, it's the same people that come every week. So if you had somebody suspicious, I think most people would question who they are in the first place.
I do agree, because I think ultimately, if it does end up that people have got to be trained and there's money and less goes on, then it is kind of the terrorists of one, because they've changed our way of life. Yeah. So, you know, I agree, but I guess I kind of see where the thinking came from.
But let's talk bog-off, Lewis, because Tesco has decided to get rid of some bog-offs?
So this comes off the back of the story a few weeks ago, obviously, as we know, that the government kind of pushed out their plans to get rid of buy one, get one free, sort of in light of the cost of living crisis. Didn't seem like the right time to do it. Tesco is saying it's going to press ahead with it anyway. It's actually joining Sainsbury's, which stopped their deals in 2016. I didn't realise that.
No.
And the
2006?
16, sorry.
Yeah.
So this is quite an interesting one, because when the government said that they were getting involved in this, I was very much like, oh, just stay out of it. It's got nothing to do with you. If someone wants to get a buy one, get one free deal, that's up to them, and people have to be in charge of their own finances and their own health. But Tesco's doing this. I think what they'll do is just shift some of the savings onto individual products. And what they've said, and this is quite a bold claim, so the supermarket is hoping to boost sales of healthy products by 65% by 2025. And I think that that's something when we talk about healthy eating that we always hear. It's cheaper to buy a burger than it is to buy some, products, some apples and whatever it is, some natural, healthy products. So actually, I think maybe now that this is being led by the supermarkets rather than the government, I'm a bit more here for it. Ooh, unpopular with the panel.
I'm very much sort of hands-off. I don't like the government coming in and nanny stating. I very much disagree. Bog-off deals can save you money.
They can if you're sensible, can't they?
They can if you're sensible. And we all know what foods are bad for us. And I would dispute Tesco's claim there that they would reduce healthy foods by a certain amount to encourage people to buy
I'd like to see
more.
proof of that.
I'm not sure. I think people will still go for a frozen lasagna or a ready meal lasagna over buying the separate products and making it, because people are time limited, energy is expensive, and also people like me have a very bad ability of putting together a meal. I can cook certain things, but I'm not great. I failed at that in life. But I think some generators are much better. So I think that until we turn the tide on looking at what is healthy and how you cook it and making sure that energy is affordable, I think that this is just a step too far. And it's a really easy win to say, let's ban, buying 2 packets of biscuits instead of 1. But I think people, if they want 2 packets, will always go and buy them anyway. Yeah. And the government isn't going to change that.
No, I think that's probably a fair point. Claire, can we have a look at The Sun on Sunday? Another clash over public sector pay. Oh, joy.
I mean, it's just never-ending, isn't it? This is union chiefs last night are threatening to escalate strike action as if they brought it down in the first place. They're trying to curb inflation. Now, that kind of doesn't make sense when you're looking at the level of pay increases that they wish to have. That is only going to fuel inflation. We've come to this really sticky point where you've got the Independent Pay Review Board suggesting one certain amount and the government saying it should be something to do with the Independent Pay Review body, but we're not going to listen to them this
That's
time.
right, yeah.
And you kind of think, why are we getting into such
Well, we got
a
an
mess?
Independent Pay Review body if everybody
Precisely.
ignores
They
it.
were used as a perfect excuse to begin with, and now they're being ignored. So this isn't going to make for a very happy year, and I think more sectors are going to take strike action, and we're going to see much more disruption. And I can't see a way out of it because nobody wants to give in.
No. Do you think it might all settle a bit if inflation comes down in 6 to 8 months, and then
possibly,
then those pay deals that are on the table will
they will look a little
better.
bit more. Yeah, they will look a little bit better to anybody. But at the moment, still Labour, with their 18-point lead, are promising the earth, but not saying how they're going to afford it.
Yes. Well, it's all down to windfall taxes and all the rest of it, isn't it?
Indeed,
I think
they need to fess up that they're going to raise our taxes.
Yeah. What's this in the Daily Star Sunday about dead ringers?
Yeah, well, this is interesting. So undertakers are going to use AI to generate lifelike avatars of dead people so their loved ones can communicate with them. Now, this is in China, and I actually do think this is something we need to start thinking about, because this is where the technology is going. It might just be an AI-generated image now, but where is the ethical line on if you could sort of mimic someone's consciousness so that you've got a digital copy of them so that when they die, actually you can still speak to your mother or your grandmother and get a pretty accurate idea of what they would have said.
You can see that it's absolutely probably almost possible now.
Yeah.
I mean, you see this sort of thing.
Oh, yeah, well, they're trialling that, because actually, oddly enough, we covered this about 8 months ago.
Yeah, I seem to remember talking about this. And they can actually generate, as you say, an avatar that's got all the algorithms from all the way your auntie used to speak, or what she used to say, so that you will be. I mean, I find it ghoulish beyond. Yeah. Can't believe it, but I can see that people they have invented or are inventing the technology, and it will be available.
It will be available.
Very Black Mirror, isn't it?
It's very. A lot of people have said it's very Black Mirror. I think as well. You've got to see it from the other person's point of view. If you know that you haven't got long left, and you're like, I'm so worried about my children, I can download a copy and hopefully they can use it to still have a bit of me there.
It's not healthy.
How different is it to looking at old videos and pictures?
Because they are old videos and pictures.
That's right. It's not in the present time. You're looking back to something.
What the heck do they think it's going to do to ordinary people's mental health to be able to find solace, yes, but in chatting to an avatar of your long-lost husband or something?
Well, it will sort of prolong the grieving process or make you avoid it altogether, I guess.
Yeah. And there's always that horrible realisation as who owns that image? Is it going to be the AI company? And what else can it be used for? If it's out of your control, I think, to my poor mum, who I lost nearly 7 years ago, the very thought of her image and voice being used for other purposes would fill me with abject horror.
Yeah, when she's not chatting to you, they're using her to sell ice cream or something.
Or give an instructional video on something. Or used in worse sort of, terrorism terms.
But we've got
videos.
to start thinking of ways to actually...
We do, and we're very, very far behind the curve on this.
AI is going to change everything. I mean, I was reading the other day they're going to be looking at how it will impact elections. When you can mock up a video of a candidate saying something they didn't say, but actually it's released the day before the election, and is it verified, is it not? So I think the only way out, probably, with this is going to be going through. We're going to have to make these mistakes, unfortunately. I don't think you can legislate it up front.
No, I don't see how you can. I think it's going to be inevitable that this is going to be an absolute nightmare.
But we're really far behind on this because the technology is there and it is growing at a faster rate than we're even looking at it, which is frightening.
We're always playing catch-up with tech, though. That's the trouble. Claire, Lewis, got to leave it there. Good to see you both this morning. Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you.
If you like a discount, Sally, Rethi and Richard have all emailed in to say Iceland gives 10% discount for over 60s and on a Tuesday.
What's so special about a Tuesday?
I don't know, because Food Warehouse, according to Wendy, gives 10% off on a Tuesday for pensioners as well, but that's anyone over 60.
Well, at least I haven't got to go all the way to New Zealand.
Well, there you go then. Here's your weather.
Hello there, very good morning to you. I'm Jonathan Vautry here with your latest GB News weather forecast provided by the Met Office. After a warm and humid start to the day, there is the chance of some thunderstorms as we head into this afternoon. They're being driven by this area of low pressure that is moving its way in from the northwest, and we are particularly watching this cold front as it gradually pushes its way eastwards, already providing some heavy outbreaks of rain to Northern Ireland, and then will eventually shift its way into Scotland, Northern England and Northern Wales later on as well. Particularly parts of eastern England up into eastern Scotland where we could see some thunderstorms bubbling up into the afternoon. They will be hit and miss, but they could bring some torrential downpours of rain, hail and frequent lightning as well. Some travel disruption is possible. Areas to the south generally staying drier, but in that sunshine seeing highs of 30, 31 degrees Celsius. Really is going to be quite a hot and a sticky day for areas in the south and east. Holding on to some evening sunshine, though, and the rain in the far northwest gradually clearing its way off and allowing clear intervals for many of us overnight. Our winds are shifting to a bit more of a westerly direction, and that's helping to feed in some slightly less humid air for tonight. So temperatures tonight will be dropping slightly lower compared to where they were last night, particularly in the west around 11, 12 degrees Celsius, still 14, 15 further east, but a touch more comfortable for sleeping compared to last night. Monday then starts off on a bright and sunny note for many of us, but we will start to see some scattered showers bubbling up, particularly across the northern half of the UK. Again, southern areas likely staying driest, and we'll see some sunny intervals throughout the afternoon, even if a little bit hazy at times. Temperatures, though, noticeably down compared to where we will see them today, only seeing highs of around 22, 23 degrees across areas of the south east. Some longer spells of rain, though, as we head towards the middle part of the week. Still some sunshine in between, and in that sunshine, feeling pleasantly warm around the low 20s. Enjoy your day. Bye-bye.
Like all families, we have arguments every now and then, but actually we agree on what the mission of GB News is, and that's the most fundamentally important thing.
GB News provides the kind of platform that lets all voices be heard. We don't hold back. We're free to say what we really think.
Just because some people who live in a tiny little Westminster bubble think that their particular story is important, that's not the most important story for me.
And often there will be difficult stories, stories that you won't find on the establishment media.
Because what people think in the north of England may be very different to what they're thinking in the home counties.
We're going to carry on telling the world what life is really like for households up and down the UK.
We love to be in your car, in your kitchen as you're having your breakfast. Whatever you're doing, you are part of the show. If it matters to you, it matters to us.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News, the People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Monday to Thursday, 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. Join me, Dan Wootton. I'll bring you the sharpest takes and hottest debates.
Do you not believe in prison?
I don't believe in prisons.
I'm completely stunned.
I guarantee you there'll be no spin, no bias, no censorship.
I actually was personally quite offended by it.
And no reason to go to bed.
So I guess they've always been quite woke.
That's Dan Wootton tonight on TV, radio and online. Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. on GB News. The People's Channel. Britain's news channel.
Nightmare commute. Kick it up a gear with me, Patrick Christie's, at drive time, 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News Radio. You can listen online and on DAB+, on the smart speaker app and on the GB News app. And if you've got an Alexa, all you have to say is, Alexa, play GB News. We're also on TuneIn and the Radio Player apps. From the school run to rush hour, get revved up with me, Patrick Christie's, on GB News and GB News Radio.
The Jubes and Kerr, we tackle the issues of the day with real, robust debate, both sides of the fence, battling it out with me in the middle with my forthright opinions and views. And often really interesting things happen because you start with a position and then by the end of the debate you find actually, well, I might not have thought about that one.
What we need in this country is 2 new political parties.
You should maybe think about doing a 2024 calendar. I'm Michelle Dewberry and I'm keeping you company right through until 7 o'clock this evening.
GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's watching.
Westminster is going around in ever-decreasing circles, followed by the media. Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it? Join me at 7 p.m, Mondays to Thursdays on Farage, here on GB News. We will have open, rational debate. We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this. Join us here on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain is watching.
You've probably seen politicians interviewed 1,000 times, but we do it differently. We find out who they really are, we don't shout, we chat, and hopefully we bring a bit of light, not just heat.
Did you know Kate Moss?
Apparently.
Do you have a pair of jeans or a pair of jeans?
No, of course I don't. What would I do with them?
My friends are like, oh my God, what's she doing now?
Join me every Sunday at 6 for Gloria Meets, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Good morning, it's 9 o'clock on Sunday, the 25th of June. Today, it's been 24 hours of mayhem. Wagner fighters starting to withdraw, but how will the failed Russian insurrection affect the war in Ukraine?
A disastrous week for the government. After terrible news for the economy and a dive in the polls, can Rishi Sunak recover?
Could Saudi Arabia's grip on sport about to expand into tennis? Reports suggest the kingdom's sovereign wealth fund has its eyes on the ATP Tour.
And it's the last day of Glastonbury today. Elton John is going to be bringing 4 friends of his, we don't know who they are yet, on stage tonight for his last ever UK show. And we'll have the very latest from the festival with gorgeous Stephanie a bit later on.
Yes, is it going to be nice for the festival? How's your weather looking today?
A hot and humid Sunday for some of us, the chance of thunderstorms for others. Join me later on for the full GB News weather forecast.
Morning to you, I'm Stephen Dixon.
And I'm Anne Diamond, and this is Breakfast on GB News. Greetings to you, wherever you're watching or listening to us, because we do seem to have an awful lot of people watching today, particularly. Maybe it's because it's a Sunday, I don't know, from all sorts of places. So Audrey and Chris, who are in Victoria in Australia, say, we always used to watch you, Anne, on ATV many years ago before we emigrated. And it's lovely to see you and Stephen's beautiful, smiling face on our screens here. It's winter here, and I'm watching your great show with a cuppa in front of the fire, cats curled up by my feet, and loving all the news and views from Britain.
Ah, very good. Linda's in the south of Spain, where we use club card points too. Really useful when you're having a difficult month. What would that be? Massimas, Mercadona? I don't know who does the best points over there.
And she adds as well, by the way, I'm sorry, Mary, who called in earlier, but I am Stephen's #1 fan.
It's like a bidding war.
Oh, it is.
Lovely. That's very.
Thank you for getting
very, very kind of
It's
you.
lovely to hear. I mean, we've heard from you all morning, really, about the sort of jobs you do. We've so many people saying, you know, they got particular jobs, and that always means that friends ask them for mates' rates.
Yeah. Matt in Mallorca says, I've got a Spanish removal company, and yes, many times over the years I've been asked for mates' rates using my services and vans. Mates' rates are €65 an hour. Yeah, good on you.
Quite right, if you're running a business.
And I love Tina. As you see, her son's got a bit of sense. He's a carpet fitter supplier with a kind heart working for himself. He doesn't do mates' rates. Not even for us. Well, she's told him not to do mates' rates. He did his sister's house and did give a bit of a discount, but still made sure he didn't lose out too much. And her daughter's a beautician, and I always make sure I pay her, though she won't accept the full amount.
And
you better keep it going, otherwise what do you do?
Yes, exactly. We were talking about the introduction of mobile phones and how, you know, most of us now carry a mobile phone. But do you remember the very first mobile phones that came in? Alison says, I had a lodger that had one of the very first massive mobile phones. Me and my friends wouldn't let him come to the pub with us if he brought the phone because it was all too embarrassing to be seen with him. Yeah. And Fred says the same. He says, I was working as a part-time barman when I saw my first mobile phone. It was the size of a couple of bricks and it had a large metal handle. It was not allowed on the tables in the pub because it was so heavy and it took forever to charge.
Oh, nightmare stuff. I remember people used to put them in the middle of the table in the pub. Just to show off the fact.
They've got a mobile phone.
Yeah, that was the thing.
Yeah.
And I've got to say hello to Mary. Hi, Mary, because on the 1st of July, Mary will celebrate her 90th birthday.
Congratulations.
A group of friends have arranged a lunch and tea, and they're having a birthday barbecue a Saturday later.
Oh, well, don't fall out, because 30% of people who have barbecues fall out. They end up rowing about something.
But she's not very well. I'm sorry to hear that, Mary. She's got a slow-growing kidney cancer and lung cancer.
Oh.
And there's no treatment possible. But she has a special way of thinking, and perhaps that's why I'm still jogging along quite happily.
Well,
state of mind.
State of mind helps, doesn't it? It's not always the complete answer, but my goodness, it helps.
It
helps you keep your friends around you as well, which they're obviously doing.
Yeah. Oh, I hope you have a lovely birthday.
Yeah. I hope the weather's nice and you don't have a row about veggie burgers and whether you should cook them from frozen.
No, you just do whatever you like at 90. Now, let's move on to our main news this morning. And what looked like a mutiny in Russia yesterday seems to have been called off overnight. The mercenary Russian fighting force, the Wagner Group, led by Yevgeny Prigozhin, had already taken over the southern city of Rostov-on-Don and were marching towards Moscow.
Putin was said to have fled the Kremlin, and it looked as though there could even be something like a civil war. But last night, a deal seemed to have been done.
Well, earlier we spoke to the defence editor of the Evening Standard, Robert Fox.
Don't like them, and they won't want them, and things are pretty volatile. You know that you now see Lukashenko, the former meat farmer, looking big and strong, because for the first time he has had something that Putin wants. And this is a layoff. It's typically Russian. There was a great friend of mine. She's partly Italian. She's a great expert on this area, saying, look, knowing my background, saying you think of things in Western European terms, Brit, Northern Europe, and you know Italy very well. And she was talking about what the Italians have been saying about it. Everything is a mafia plot to them. Now, my friend said, no, it isn't, because the Russians are far too incompetent now. They don't do it. And there were wonderful reports, I was saying to one of your colleagues just now, on my social media yesterday, that the reason why nobody was moving in Voronezh and in Rostov-on-Don, they couldn't get the police to turn up. They were either hungover, a lot of them, about half of them, or completely drunk still from the Friday night binge. And it is. And Zelensky, he would say it, wouldn't he, the Ukrainian leader, but he's got it about right. There is some sort of extraordinary chaos going on in Russia, but it's unfortunately chaos still with an awful lot of firepower.
Yes, but with that in mind, because the Wagner Group had done so much, and as we're saying, done the dirty work, if they're not there now, where does that leave it?
Yes, and I think you've got it absolutely nailed. Do the Russian grunts, who've often been forced into the line against their will, do they want to take the place at Bakhmut, Zaporizhia, Advika, all these places that have been coming up on our maps? The only thing that they've got with a slight advantage, as I'm sure you've been reporting, is that the Russian attack helicopters, the appropriately named alligators, the Ka-62s, have been pretty effective, and that's where the Ukrainians are weak. They do not have local air power to protect their frontline forces.
That's the wonderful Robert Fox, who's been with us all morning, actually, hasn't he? So
he knows his stuff.
He really does.
Now, closer to home, it has been a very tough week for the Conservative Party. Of course, interest rates haven't helped, have they? They were put up by for the 13th consecutive month, highest level since 2008. Now, the Bank of England does that to try to tackle inflation, which hadn't come down. But, of course, amongst other things, it leads to this mortgage time bomb that everyone's been talking about.
Yes, and that's having an effect on government popularity, as you can imagine. The latest YouGov poll shows that Tory support has fallen to 22%, which is a figure not seen since February and only 3 points higher than probably their lowest ever rating, just after Liz Truss's mini-budget.
Yes, well, let's see what Camilla Tominey makes of this ahead of her show kicking off at 9:30 this morning. Good morning.
Good morning.
This is a massive Tory... We're sort of calling it a Tory headache. It's more than a headache. It's like a migraine.
I mean, it's quite serious, isn't it? And I think in terms of Rishi Sunak's 5 deliverables, I mean, they're not looking deliverable because he's said he's going to bring that inflation rate down to 5%. It's stubbornly high. We're the highest in the G7, I believe. And equally, he's talked about bringing down the debt. And this week we found out that debt is now 100% of GDP, the highest level since 1961. So this reputation for sort of fiscal discipline, combined with the fact that they're falling out of favour with their own electorate over high taxes. I get what he was saying in the week. You know, he did that speech at the IKEA factory where he said the best tax break we can give you is to bring inflation down. But the point is it's not coming down.
No.
And it's going to be, along with the situation in Russia, a major theme of my show today, because I've got Kwasi Kwarteng coming on, and I want to ask him...
Oh, that will be interesting.
Well, are you to blame? Is this your fault? Because there's some interesting dialogue in some of the newspapers, particularly the Sunday Times long read, where some Tories are starting to be more favourable towards Trussonomics.
Yes.
Yeah.
Because if the economic picture hasn't improved under the, steady and stable leadership of Rishi Sunak, and in fact, I know nobody understands them, but the gilt yields have gone up even more than they did after the mini-budget, and that basically contributes to Britain's inefficiency in handling debt effectively.
That's how much we have to pay for borrowing and things,
Exactly.
isn't it?
So if they've gone up, i.e. it's got worse, the economic picture with regard to debt has got worse since the mini-budget, there was an ally quoted in the Sunday Times saying, Liz could see the calamity coming and tried to pull on the handbrake and do a U-turn. And actually, is she now being vindicated? So I'll ask the former Chancellor this. I know a lot of people watching this will think it's all their fault. And have
but
they
also a lot of people actually think maybe there was something in it.
Maybe there's something in it.
We're beginning to get that feedback.
And John Glenn is coming on. He's the Chief Secretary to the Treasury, so he's the man in charge of the purse strings with Jeremy Hunt. Again, Jeremy Hunt's been writing in today's newspapers trying to reassure people. But the question there as well is, we get the whole idea of the Bank of England being independent. But how much responsibility must Andrew Bailey and indeed Mark Carney, who was out and about last week blaming everything on Brexit. Sorry, you were both of the governors that presided over ultra-low interest rates and huge amounts of quantitative easing.
Well, why don't they get rid of... I mean, this is the thing someone... Oh, it was David Mellor saying the other day, why, if Rishi Sunak wants to show his mettle and show that he's doing something, why doesn't he sack Andrew Bailey?
Yeah.
Because what he's done hasn't worked.
Well, if you're going to take an unfavourable view of Rishi Sunak, it's that, you know, he was taken hostage by the Treasury when he was Chancellor. He's continuing with that orthodoxy now as Prime Minister, and that, you know, he doesn't have the strength of character to do that with Andrew Bailey. And they keep on wanting to insist. It is politically convenient, by the way, to keep the Bank of England independent, so that when I asked John Glenn, well, what should interest rates be and how long are they going to remain at 5%? He can say that's not a decision for us. We see a lot of this,
but
don't we?
everybody seems to be saying things like that.
I know, but Anne, that is the government of the era.
It doesn't still get anything done.
No, but why do they have... the Bank of England is probably a case in point, but why do they always have these arm-length bodies and quangos? We saw it during COVID, so that you don't blame the Department for Health, you can blame PHE, or you can blame NHS England or NHS Digital. It's like, when does central government take responsibility for some of these calamitous decisions? We learn in the papers today that 1.3 million people are due to look at their mortgage again. Their fixed rate comes up. That is an enormous amount of people. We then have the left talking about mortgage bailouts. That doesn't make any economic sense.
No.
You're going to have the have-nots, the renters, trying to prop up the haves. So we'll ask all these questions of John Glenn, Kwasi. We've also got Tony Abbott on, former Australian PM.
Oh, wow.
He's in London at the moment because he was at a Conservative conference in the week. Really intrigued to hear his reaction to the Russia situation. He once famously said he wanted to square up to Putin after the Russians shot down MH17.
Oh, that's right.
27 Australians were killed. Also got Malcolm Rifkind in. He's a former Foreign Secretary, former Defence Secretary. He's a very, very bright man. Intrigued to hear what he thinks this means for the West and how we handle Putin. So, as ever, it's a jam-packed show.
It is, very much so.
Maybe you can get a dance out of Malcolm Rifkind. I was once at a do where Malcolm Rifkind was there with his wife, and he really hit the dance floor.
Did he?
Which is, it's not what you'd expect
What, in
from
sort
him.
of traditional, sort of Strictly Come Dancing-esque jive?
No, it was a bit more sort of...
Breakdancing?
No, but a bit more poppy.
Was it?
I was very surprised. It was about 15, 20 years ago, and it stayed with me.
Was it dad dancing?
Dad dancing, yeah. Well,
he was really...
yeah,
he was
really
up for
going
it.
for it.
I'm not sure if I can inject that into a conversation
on.
about the Wagner Group.
I'll give
we'll
you,
see.
I'll give you a fiver if
All
you
right,
can do it.
I'll take on that bet.
All right, Camilla, thanks very much indeed.
It's something you didn't know.
No, it was just one of those things, you know, when you see something, you think, ooh, that's sort of quite... I'm glad he's doing it, but it's not quite right.
He's probably out there in the green room.
I could have a word with him. I'll have a word.
Okay.
There you go. Anyway, someone who can shake a move very well is our very own Stephanie Tetchy. She's down at Glastonbury. We'll bring you the very latest in just a moment.
First and foremost, I'm a GB News fan, and I was before I was working here. Just love the fact that we're asking the questions that a lot of establishment media won't ask.
With a bit of a twist, we not only want to inform you, but we want to keep you entertained.
It's worth the drive because you get in and the team's all ready and waiting, they're itching to go, and it's a proper little family.
GB News is the People's Channel.
It's the audience that makes the programme sing.
We're giving our viewers and our listeners a voice. I see the thousands of your letters, tweets, emails, you name it, coming in.
Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it?
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent you.
It's time for something different. It's time for GB News. I'm very patriotic. I believe in Britain. Our best days lie ahead.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Join us here on GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Join me, Patrick Christie's, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6. We tackle the day's news agenda like you've never seen before. It's high tempo, high octane, the most controversial topics and the best guests. You will not be able to take your eyes and ears off it. I'm not afraid to ask the questions that you really want answered. 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my 2 comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
GB News has its own late-night paper preview show, Headliners, where comedians take you through the next day's top news stories. You don't have to bother reading the newspaper, we've got it covered for you. Headliners, every night at 11 p.m, and repeated every morning at 5 a.m. We won't send you to sleep like some of the other paper review shows out there. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, on Sunday mornings from 9:30, taking the politicians to task and breaking out of SW1 to see how their decisions are affecting you across the UK. Bursting the Westminster bubble every Sunday morning, only on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain's watching.
Every Sunday from 11, join Michael Portillo.
There'll be topical discussion, looking at the week before and the week to come. So kick back and relax at 11 a.m. on Sundays on GB News with me, Michael Portillo. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
What you get for breakfast is something that, if we do our jobs right, you will wake up to news that you didn't know the night before.
It's a conversation. It's not just me and Eamon.
We want to get to know you, and we want you to get to know us.
From 6, it's Breakfast with Eamon and Isabel.
Monday to Thursdays on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Hi, I'm Dan Wootton. You can watch me live on GB News Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. And did you know that you can also watch and listen live on our website, gbnews.com? You'll always be up to date on the latest breaking news, as well as enjoying the best stories, opinions and shows. You can even join the debate under our live player as you're watching. So head straight to gbnews.com on TV, radio and online. GB News, Britain's news channel.
Quick one from Jackie. Morning, Jackie. You've got to have a bowl of salad on a barbecue and then chuck it on your burger. And Stephen, it's a cob, not a bun. So you're clearly from Nottingham.
I was going to say, doesn't that depend on where you live?
Yeah.
And Phil says, I must disagree with Stephen, reference putting frozen burgers on a barbecue. It might be all right for his veggie burgers, but for meat-based food, it should be totally defrosted safely. But yeah, we did make that point.
We did say veggie burgers.
Yeah. But
Phil,
you see?
listen carefully.
Everybody's disagreeing already. This is what happens with barbecues.
Yes. Yeah. Anyway, Aidan McGee likes a good barbecue, don't you?
I do actually. Yeah, my brother used to charge to get into his barbecues. Can you believe that? To charge a £5.
Yeah.
Or is he?
Charge family.
Yes.
£5.
Yeah. He's as tight as 2 coats of paint. But he used to charge £5, or you brought your own meat.
Yeah. Oh well, fair enough. Well, it's not fair enough.
No, I think
fair enough.
But you agree?
I don't think it is.
You're legitimising this behaviour.
Well, that's fine.
If you're throwing a family barbecue, you don't expect everybody to.
That was a lot of money. That was a lot of money back in the day.
You wouldn't need to charge if he was sort of playing in the ATP if it's owned by the Saudis?
No, but it looks like the next step. I mean, it was a story in the back of the Mail on Sunday by Mike Dixon, who's appeared on this channel in the recent past, talking tennis. It's the ATP section of tennis, and it wouldn't include the Grand Slams because they're kind of separate from the ATP, but it would include things like the Queen's and Halle.
Oh, it would it?
Yeah, and Madrid and all the other celebrated tournaments we know throughout the year.
So the Saudis want control, do they?
They want it's investment, so I don't know if they want complete control of it, but I think tennis wants to avoid what happened with golf. So golf were quite resistant to Saudi investment. They didn't really know what it looked like. And then you had that situation for a year or so where you had 2 tours existing side by side and there's so much friction between the two. And I think they want to be ahead of the game. The timing's not too bad because we're getting to the stage now where Saudi investment is not new anymore. You know, we've seen it in... they've bought Newcastle United 2 years ago through the Public Investment Fund. They have gone into golf, as we mentioned. There's stories that they might go into F1. If you want to broaden it out to Middle East investment, well, obviously Manchester City have been owned for 15 years now by the Abu Dhabi Group. The World Cup was held in Qatar. Paris Saint-Germain owned by Qatar. So it's not new, but I think tennis is in a situation where they would like to try and work with the Saudis rather than work against them. They've learned the lessons from golf. Andrea Gaudenzi said that talks have been underway since December. Gaudenzi, of course, was a quite celebrated performer in the men's game back about 20-odd years ago, but that's his role now. He's an administrative role, and he'd be leading the sort of move towards that investment. But he said it's absolutely crucial that we kind of preserve what we like about tennis. So only one ranking system.
Inevitably, it would change a bit, wouldn't it?
Do you think so?
More about money, and it would go more commercial.
But there's already so much money in it anyway. I mean, if you win Wimbledon,
I know, but we like it how it is.
I know, but I don't think
to resist change.
Yes, I know, but as I say, I don't think it would affect the Grand Slams. I think it wouldn't as things stand. But as you say, maybe that's one of the changes, because I mean, if you come into tennis, surely you're spending big money. Surely you want to get your hands on Wimbledon, don't you?
Yeah, probably.
Oh, that just can't happen. I'm sorry, that cannot.
Are you worried they
happen.
might get rid of the all-white outfits as well?
No, they can't do that either.
Oh, there you go. We fear change.
Yeah, but look, we said last week they're coming for football. Tennis could be next, and I think they don't want a situation where the reputation of tennis is dragged through the mud in the way that golf has experienced in the last year or so.
Aidan, thanks very much indeed.
Good to see you.
Should we head to Glastonbury?
I think it's time we headed to Glastonbury. I don't know why. Because it's right over my head, frankly. I'm just not into that sort of music or camping out. But Stephanie is, because look at you. You look gorgeous.
Good morning, campers.
Flowers in your hair? You have?
Yeah, this morning I went to a floral garland making class. So I just made this little wreath for my head for the day.
Oh, that's lovely.
Gorgeous. Are you going to wear that for Sir Elton tonight?
Yes, I will. And I've got my heart-shaped glasses for Elton John and the 4 stars that he will be bringing out tonight. So we don't have to wait that long to find out who will be the special guest that will be joining Elton John on the Pyramid stage tonight.
Tell us why you think Britney might be part of that.
Well, if reports are true, Britney Spears has been seen arriving at Bristol Airport. So from Bristol, it's not too far to get to Somerset. So I can't think of any other reason why Britney would be in Bristol other than to join Sir Elton John. They did release a track earlier this year. It was like Britney's comeback in almost, 10 years. So if she does arrive on stage tonight and she performs, it's definitely going to be a big story.
It would be huge. Mind you, we don't have to wait that long for some great shows, do we? Because Blondie's up today, aren't they?
I cannot wait. So they will be opening the Pyramid stage today at 12:15. So they will be in the Legends slot every year in Glastonbury. They get big iconic bands to fill the legendary spot, and today it is Blondie. So I cannot wait to see Debbie Harry. I'm such a big fan.
Fantastic, yeah. So you're going to go to that. And then are you going to stay there at the Pyramid stage? Can you do that? Stay all day?
You can just stay the whole day and just go from back-to-back shows. If you want to get a good spot to see Elton tonight, then you have to be there all day. Because I can imagine if you go around 10 o'clock by his set, you're not going to get no space at all. You'll be right at the back and hardly seeing him at all.
When do they open the gates?
They're already open. So now people are already awake on camp, but the first person going on stage will be Blondie at 12:15.
Fabulous stuff. We hope to see you cheering her on. Steph?
She will.
She'll be atomic.
From Blondie, like Debbie Harry, Britney Spears, Lady Gaga, maybe. That's a heck of a lineup, isn't it?
Could be quite a day. Steph, you enjoy it. We'll see you very soon.
Yeah, get off and join the queue.
Thank you, guys. Take care.
Here's what we're talking about: old tech, new tech. Mike says if you want to see a load of old style phones, go to the Milton Keynes Museum. Loads of old phones, and kids of any age can play with them.
Yeah, they specialise in phones at Milton Keynes Museum.
They do. I've been actually. It's very good. Very interesting. If you're a geek, it's very, very good. See all that, and they've got a TARDIS.
Have a lovely day. If you're spending the afternoon at a barbecue, don't have a row.
No, don't have a salad. Camilla Tomlin is here next.
Hello there, very good morning to you. I'm Jonathan Vautry here with your latest GB News weather forecast provided by the Met Office. After a warm and humid start to the day, there is the chance of some thunderstorms as we head into this afternoon. They're being driven by this area of low pressure that is moving its way in from the northwest, and we are particularly watching this cold front as it gradually pushes its way eastwards, already providing some heavy outbreaks of rain to Northern Ireland, and then will eventually shift its way into Scotland, Northern England and Northern Wales later on as well. particularly parts of eastern England up into eastern Scotland, where we could see some thunderstorms bubbling up into the afternoon. They will be hit and miss, but they could bring some torrential downpours of rain, hail and frequent lightning as well. Some travel disruption is possible.